Yes.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yeah, if it is recorded, we'll upload it on YouTube, ma'am.
Yeah.
Hi, madam. Good afternoon. How are you? This is Markandeya.
Yes.
Yeah, the pheromones guy.
AGDC Bite.
How are you?
Doing good, madam.
How are the products doing? Gone into how many countries now?
Almost 30 countries, but in India, we are proud that we sold for 1 lakh acres.
Very nice.
Almost 45,000 farmers.
Very nice.
And it's giving complete control, unbelievable control. I mean, they don't see the population at all, isn't it? So people are surprised, but adoption will take time. So it has to be promoted as a vaccine.
That always takes time, but then it comes in slowly.
Yeah. And the space is also creating waves all across the world. There recently, I think FMC acquired a very small company in a startup in Sweden called BioFero at $200 million acquisition price. They just have 2 products, and we have delivered almost like about 75 products to the entire world.
Very nice.
Our programs have been addressing government, so focus has never been to commercialize. I think with BIRAC support, we could translate that to take the technology to the farmer. But otherwise, most of the time, executing government programs in area-wide management, like lakhs of acres, especially in the US, we have been burdened with almost like about 42 programs till now. Mm-hmm.
Our requirements are obviously through the state governments and the state agriculture programs. So exactly. You have targeted a very correct market.
Thanks.
Okay, I think it's time. So 3 o'clock. So let's start. Hearty welcome, everyone. Firstly, I would like to, say apologies for this Google Meet, with the Zoom Meet problems. So many are having issues with it. And as I said, like, we are vulnerable with the technical difficulties, and we are prepared. We're prepared for that. Anyway, so firstly, thanks for everybody joining. So it's a whale tank. I mean, why we are doing whale tank is that we want to go over Shark Tank, because you all know about Shark Tanks, where startups pitch to angels and they are called as sharks, and we want to go higher. So it's a venture capitalist and we call them whales. It's actually Uday's term, whale tank. So this event is being organized by FABA. So I'm not sure if everybody knows about FABA, or FABA is a kind of non-profit and old organization really trying to bridge a lot of things together in biotechnology space. Actually, we have Uday, CEO of Reagent Biosciences, who will give a brief about FABA. So please stay tuned. Uday, the stage is yours.
Thanks a lot, Jagdish. And you don't need to apologize for what happened with the Zoom. It's all working out great now. So, in fact, you should, pat yourself on the back. So, yeah. So, welcome everybody to what I think is the world's very first whale tank international session. We, like Jagdish said, we call ourselves whale because we are big, we are powerful, but we are not sharks. So I think that's kind of distinguishes us from the other programs that might be out there. So firstly, I'd like to thank the dignitaries who are here. Dr. Renu Swaroop, I see, and I just saw Dr. Dipanvita as well. All of you who have made time to be here, as well as the panelists, the people who are chairing the sessions today, as well as all the participants. Without you, this obviously it's like a wedding. If nobody shows up, the wedding is not quite the same, right? So thank you so much for showing up and taking so much interest. Although you have such busy schedules. So thank you very much. So I am going to do 2 things. First, I will introduce FABA to you, and then I also want to introduce the intention of this program that we have for today and tomorrow. FABA, as you know, is the Federation of Asian Biotech Associations. It was founded in 2005 as a not-for-profit organization and still continues to be the same. There have been many people involved in this. If you look at the brochure or if you go to the FABA website, you will see how it originated and who really spearheaded all this. But since I have been involved, the main spearhead has been Professor Redana, who you can see right on the screen. And really, because of his leadership, FABA is thriving today, I think. The original intent of FABA was to promote the overall interest of biotechnology, biotechnologists, startups, entrepreneurs, industries, and specifically to all of the Asian countries. So this is, FABA is not just limited to India alone. We have, I don't want to make a mistake and say how many member countries we have, but we have more. I believe the number is 29, but please don't quote me on that. So it's rapidly proliferating. And again, there is intense interest from people, countries outside of India in this activity, especially our neighbors who don't have access to all of these resources and technologies and mentorship, I think are very, very keenly working with us. So we really are here to promote collaborations. And this is something that Dr. Redana has been championing for a while. Initially, I used to be surprised as to, how much interest he takes in this, but the marriage of academia and industry has not quite happened in this country yet. If you look at more developed countries, and what I mean by developed is the Western countries, you will see that pretty much every university has multi-million-dollar, multi-billion-dollar spin-offs going towards translational research and entrepreneurship. So that model is coming here now, and I really want to thank BIRAC under the leadership of Dr. Renu Swarup for that. It really helped me, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of entrepreneurs who benefited from that vision that Dr. Bhan had and she had and all of that. So thank you so much for that, madam. I really want to thank you on behalf of all the entrepreneurs of how much you have done for the startup ecosystem in this country. I also want to tell you a little bit more about two very recent activities that FABA has. One is called FABA Academy. This is about less than 3 years old, and the intent here is to, at the grassroots level, help students, startups, entrepreneurs, and academic people from academia to learn about different aspects of how the industry, biotech industry works. And we have a very successful program called Drug Discovery Workshop that happens once a year, where anybody, literally even 12th grade students, can join and learn the basics of drug discovery. I would strongly urge, if you have not had a chance to attend one of these sessions, you must attend it, because these are world's leading experts. These are not just people from India, but we have people from all over the world coming and giving a lecture. There's hands-on training. So you get a lot of different benefits. And as I said, really, it has become something that has become a benchmark in the drug discovery learning space, the drug discovery workshop of FABA. So please do look it up and make sure you attend that session. More recent is the entrepreneurship wing that has been started. And idea here is to bring together, as a startup, the initial funding comes from friends and family. And then, as Jagdish was saying, there might be 1 or 2 angels who invest. And then it appears like in India, the startups begin to struggle. The next level of getting institutional funding, like venture capitalist funding, has been a huge gap. So to be able to move from a prototype into clinical trials into a product, we obviously need much, much more than what angels can offer or friends and family. So the idea behind the entrepreneurship wing that has been formed by FABA is to bring those two together and somehow make connections between venture capitalists as well as startup companies and allow for an open free forum where the two can meet each other and perhaps a little bit of matchmaking will happen. So today is really the first ever program of this kind we are doing. We're going to do this every year. We're very grateful again to Dr. Swaroop for agreeing to be here. That really made the difference between, it really elevated the status of this meeting. So that's about FABA. I also want to, we've had a lot of questions about, will I get any money if I attend this session from startups? The simple answer is no. Nobody gives you money. There's no free lunch. Without due diligence, you will not get even 1 rupee. All right, that's the mantra of venture capitalism is they look at you, if they like you, they start their due diligence, and the whole process could take anywhere from 3 months to up to a year. So if your expectation was you'll walk away with a big check from a venture capitalist, please, do not believe that. I think instead, what you should look for as a startup is to 99.99% of startups are run by scientists. I'm a scientist, I'm running a startup. And we don't know enough about business, right? We don't. We think that our idea is the world's best idea, and that's why we get into it. But eventually that has to translate into a business proposition. And that's where I think a lot of us are unable to make that. So what you should look for in today's meeting is learn those nuances of how to translate from successful people and leaders such as Dr. Swaroop, Dipanvita, learn from these people as to how to make that transition from being a technocrat into a well-rounded business person CEO. Again, I want to reiterate 99.99%, and that includes me. We have not acquired this skill. So meetings like the one that you're going to attend today are critical. This is your mini MBA. You're not going to find this level of exposure anywhere else. I'll give you a simple example, and then I'll stop there. We planned a lot for this meeting under the leadership of Dr. Reddanna, Ajit was there, Prabhat, myself, many others. We had a beautiful plan, but it came down to execution. The execution was done by people such as Jagadish and also Divya. These are the two names that I know. So my point here is you may have all the plans on a business paper, right? But how you execute, execution is the key to success for a startup. If you do not execute it flawlessly, like Jagdish has done here, you are not going to be a successful company. So very simple things like this is what you will learn for people who have been successful. What kind of processes did they go through to be successful? So my suggestion is use this as a mini MBA, have a notebook ready, start taking notes. And I think that's the best way for you to get value for this. So I am going to stop here, and my last thing is I want to introduce myself. My name is Uday Saxena. I am also a startup entrepreneur, and I'm also looking for funding. So investors, please do call me. I'll post my number in the chat box. So thank you very much for listening to me, and really have a great 2-day session, because I think this is once in a lifetime mini MBA opportunity for all of us. Thank you, Jagdish. I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thanks, Uday. I think you have walked the talk, because you know what it means to be a startup. You raise VC money and you know the problems. And I think there can't be a perfect start. Great. So everyone, like today, let me walk you through what exactly we have planned with the whale tank. You all have received the brochure, but let me walk you through the program once again so that you are well prepared. So we are firstly, we need to thank our sponsors. This is a non-profit organization. Without support from sponsors, we can't do anything. So we would like to thank Agilent, Thermo Fisher, and Cytiva, who sponsored us some capital, and also the incubators, who are the main pillars here. Like they are the ones who recommended startups from their incubators who would be interested in pitching to VCs. So our thanks goes to incubators. And if you look at the program, also the VCs, like we have VCs from several places. We have from India, we have from Russia, which is a Middle East fund. We have people from Brussels, we have people from Switzerland, many other VCs, like we have around 6-7 VCs. So I'll just walk you through the program. I don't want to take much time. We also have many speakers. You know the agenda. You have the agenda with you. So today, it's not a whale tank. Tomorrow is a whale tank. So you will be pitching, or the startups whoever got selected will be pitching to VCs tomorrow. But today we will have the main impact. It's all about like how we are creating the ecosystem. So we'll start with talk from Dr. Renu Swarup about the opportunities in India for the startups to make a global impact. Then we have a panel discussion moderated by Mrs. Deepanvita Chattopadhyaya with several incubator CEOs. I mean, incubators play a huge role in building a startup. I mean, I worked with a couple of incubators and I know how some can make or break the startup. And we will discuss a couple of successful elements here. And the main highlight today is that a fireside chat, which is moderated by Uday again. So we have 4 successful innovators or entrepreneurs who raise money from VCs. So like whatever steps now the startups are undergoing, they have done it. So please stay tuned and talk to them, listen to them. And we also have an open and networking session. There's also like 4 speakers will have their own Zoom events. So you can talk to them separately. And also booths will be opening at 6. So you could, I mean, booths are open even now. You could go and walk through walk and see the booths. But if you really want to talk to the people, it will be open at 6. So people can go there and talk to the people. Like if you are interested in their product, their services, or if you want to invest, I think at 6 it would be the right time. So at 6 you can talk to these 4 innovators, or as well as you can go to the booth. So we will open the booth until 10 p.m. Indian time. So you stay there and do it. So, and also we didn't plan any breaks in between. Like if you want to have a break, just feel free and then come back. So we will be here. And so without due now, I would like to call Dr. Hemalata Reddy to introduce our keynote speaker. Hema ma'am, are you there? Okay, she has some issues. Okay, never. Okay, let me take care. So let me take care of it. So okay, so I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Renu Swarup. Dr. Renu Swarup is presently Senior Advisor for Department of Biotechnology, which is called as DBT, Ministry of Science and Technology. She also holds position of Managing Director, BIRAC, Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council, which is a public sector company. Yeah, she's a senior advisor in the Department of Biotechnology, Ministry of Science and Technology, has been awarded with National Entrepreneurship Award 2017 under mentor category in the recognition track. Union Finance Minister Sri Arun Jaitley presented the awards at the National Entrepreneurship Award Ceremony 2017 in New Delhi. So, I mean, since I'm not so senior, I can't really talk what exactly she has done, but I'm sure she has done really a great thing in the biotechnology space. So please, madam, we are very delighted that you are here and also raising the curtain for the event. So the stage is yours, ma'am. Feel free to share the screen.
Dr. Redana, if you can introduce Dr. Swarup, because that will be helpful. Deepanita here.
That's fine, Deepanvita. I'll only correct Jagdish by saying that I had my designation on 5 years back when I was a senior advisor. I'm now retired. I'm no longer in government service. I retired as secretary of the Department of Biotechnology and the chairperson of BIRAC. So that's only a correction for those who
sorry
don't
about
have.
that.
That's absolutely fine. There's no further instruction required, and I think I will go on to starting so that we don't really lose time. And 1 minute, I'm just getting my slides up. Is it going on slideshow?
Yes, ma'am. We can see
So
it.
first of
Yes.
all, compliments and congratulations to all of you for organizing this event. And yes, Dr. Edana, Uday, Ajit, and all of you who've spoken, and of course the executing team of Jagdish and Divya, if I heard correctly. It's not an easy event to organize, and I like the name Whale Tank. It's actually a good name to have, and I got the understanding from Uday that he said they're not sharks, they're whales. So that's a very interesting point for all the startups who are here. But I think it's a right time for you to bring them together, because this is clearly the time when we have startups who are coming into the fold of this whole ecosystem that has been set up. But it's important for them as they scale up to sustain. And I think that growth and making a global impact, which is really what you all wanted to be the key topic for today, is important if you sustain your growth. And I think for that, bringing together the VCs, bringing together the investors, and more importantly, bringing together a network where they have a peer-to-peer understanding and learning is so very important. Because for all the startups who are here, the new ones who have joined in and you are part of today's meeting, and for those who are the successful ones, and also the experts, the incubator leaders who are here, you'll remember one thing, that when you get onto an entrepreneurial path, it does become a lonely, very lonely journey, because there's a lot of risk that's involved. So if you have your mentors, your teammates, your peers, your networks, it keeps you going. It gives you the encouragement to move forward. And that is really what I wanted to share with you in my first slide, that if you're a startup, you must have definitely followed the principles of the 5 C's, because they are so very important. And especially if you look at the tech-based startups, and especially the deep tech startups, we see very clearly, and Uday mentioned it so well, that as scientists, we have so much of confidence on our own scientific idea, but it's important for us to see how that moves along that particular journey and becomes an enterprise. And for that, it's very important that you have clarity of the idea that you've chosen to move ahead. Because unless and until you have clarity on that particular idea, how are you going to take it forward? And on this, let me tell you, I do recall that when we started supporting these startups more than a decade ago, we started what was, which today is also one of the most sought after scheme, and that is the big grant that we have. It's truly big, may not be big in terms of what they get in the finances. It's a 50 lakh grant. And the reason it is 50 lakh is because we looked at $100,000, and at that point of time, $100,000 was 50 lakhs. So we stuck to that. Even now, we haven't changed that. The competition was very, very tough. And many startups would speak to me, and they would call me and say, ma'am, increase the grant number, there should be more people who come in. Why was my grant rejected? See, it's very important for us at that point of time when we are taking a decision, and I'm sure the angels and others also do that sort of due diligence when they go in, is that if that idea is not really worth moving forward in becoming an enterprise, there's no point for us to start supporting it or funding it there. You must be clear. When you start at an idea stage, many a times they would come to say, it's only an idea today. I really don't know what the market is going to be. But you must. If you start an idea, you must really know what your market's going to be. How are you going to take it through that path otherwise? So I think that is what is very important to see, that how are you going to take it ahead? How are you going to move on? Which path are you going to move? You must have confidence on your own ability, because this is not really a journey which you can sort of take somebody else's idea and move it ahead. It has to be your ability. And based on your own ability is when you bring teams together, you connect with the mentors, you identify the correct resources, whether it's the incubation center, whether it's the technical unit. And yes, academic partnerships are very, very important. So you must have confidence on your own ability to be able to move forward. It's a risky journey. And I think all those who are here, successful entrepreneurs, will vouch for this, that there are a lot of risks involved. So you must have the courage to take that risk. There would be many who will pull you down or who will dissuade you and, a little up the pathway, and they'll say, well, that's the end of it. You need to go back. But you must have the courage to take risks, because to take the risk, you have to have the conviction to accomplish. And once you have that conviction, you'll find the way around. You'll find the way around of taking your idea forward, finding the right funding source, finding the right incubation center, finding the right mentor, connecting with the right networks, and most importantly, finding the right investor. And I think today, all of you who's come in have come in because you have that conviction to accomplish. And if you have that conviction to accomplish, and lastly, and most importantly, a commitment to deliver, that's really what the VCs see. That's what the investors see. From the government, we put in an initial grant. But I think when you pitch, it comes out very clearly from your pitch that you have made, that are you really following the principles of these 5 C's? And if yes, that's really what it takes to move forward. Having said this, I think it gives us a lot of pleasure that today India stands at a position where we are the 3rd largest startup nation in the world. And all this has happened over the last few years, mainly because of the strong ecosystem that has been built, because of the startups who came forward following those principles of 5 C's, and also because of a large number of policies and enabling frameworks that were put into place. These are numbers which were released by the DPIIT in their recent report, and obviously all of you are investors and startups and you have these numbers. So I'm not going to sort of give you these as new, but it's very heartening to see these numbers. And this is the entire startup ecosystem. So it gives us, whether it's the funding that has come in, whether it's the valuation of these Indian startups, but yes, a lot of this is basically the tech sector, the electronic sector. But let me tell you, the biotech sector is not far behind. We've done very, very well for the biotech sector. I still recall that in 2012, when we were, yes, Dr. Bhan was very correct to mention, he was the architect with his vision. And we sat and I had the great pleasure of working with him when we put together the strategy of setting up of BIRAC. The whole purpose was this whole area, it's a vacuum. We had in Department of Biotechnology supported and created a very strong foundation for biotechnology research, whether it was our human resource programs through which we created this skilled human resource, or it was the infrastructure that we had set up, the cutting edge infrastructure, the autonomous institutions. It was a very, very strong ecosystem for research. And then we were moving into translation. But if you take research to translation, it certainly cannot be completed unless and until you have the industry and the startups along with you. So I think that is what gave us the vision. Jagdish, I think some mics need to be muted because I'm getting an echo
Yes,
back.
ma'am, I muted that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So it was that vision that we had, which said there is a vacuum there. How do we enter that? And for it, what we realized is that there was no way that we could pull these young researchers and scientists to either have spin-offs or to get onto an entrepreneurial journey. That was never the career path that scientists would choose after they would do their research. So it became important for us, and that's how BIRAC got set up. And most of you have been associated with BIRAC, so I'm not going to go into the details of the journey, but we started with less than 50 startups at that point of time. And today we've crossed 5,000. So it's very heartening to see that this ecosystem today has responded with so much of confidence. And the trends that we saw in the bioeconomy over the last couple of years, and yes, definitely, the last year has been very, very encouraging. COVID gave an opportunity for the spotlight to be on biotech. But it's also important that while the spotlight went on biotech because of COVID, they delivered. And they delivered because the ecosystem and the foundation was so robust now that you could deliver. And the recent report which BIRAC with ABLE has brought out they say that we are now at crossed 80 billion as our what the bioeconomy is, with the target of 150 billion by 2025. You see the numbers. And when you see, the report says that it's an unprecedented R&D investment by the industry. I must also say here that the government came forward and also made huge investments in augmenting that infrastructure and augmenting that ecosystem with the gaps that we could identify when we were actually putting the ecosystem to test the products for COVID. So it was a real test bed that we were using COVID as. We had built up a wonderful ecosystem. We had all these industry, academia, partnerships, the startups, and now came the biggest challenge for humankind. And that was, how do we deliver the products in the shortest period of time? So the ecosystem stood up, but we did find gaps, and the government came forward and put in the investment to augment that. And I'm also pleased to let you know that there was a global funders report that was just released about a month back. And that has actually identified Department of Biotechnology globally as one of the top 5 countries, 5 agencies to be able to put in investments into biotech. So it was very heartening to see that. And where has that investment gone? That investment has gone into augmenting this whole ecosystem. And that's really how you see, of course, biopharma is the largest chunk. But I must say here that biopharma gives us that level of confidence that all the other sectors also have the potential. It's now how we learn from what biopharma has done to bring it into the other sectors as well. The Government of India has come forward as a very important stakeholder in working with the startups, the industry, the venture capital, the angel network, and it's getting crowded now. And we hope that with this, every sector will be represented. Of course, biotech, it's the Department of Biotechnology and BIRAC, and you have Startup India, you have Atal Innovation Mission, you have Department of Science and Technology, you have METI, you have DRDO doing for defense, you have space now coming forward, you have the automobile sector, you have the textile sector, each one of them. NASSCOM, of course, is doing its own bit, working with METI. So we have a large number of these agencies and associations. Let me tell you, and I'm sure many of the entrepreneurs who are here who've put in many, many years into their journey would say, we wish we could start our journey from where we did many years back, because today what you have as the ecosystem was not there a decade ago. And that really is the strength for us to move forward. What has this ecosystem done? And Uday very correctly said, we still do not have that academia industry partnership as a very strong component, and we are striving to do that through the various programs that we do from the government. But we do recognize the fact that startups are a very, very important bridge between the academia and the industry. Experience tells us that it's no longer time when you have the academia which develops a technology and says, these are the technologies we have for transfer, let industries come and take it and commercialize it. It doesn't work that way. These have to be partnerships that get built right from the beginning, and startups are ideally positioned to be able to work, to take these technologies, to take these ideas, to take this through the POC, early validation. And then, of course, we have the industry which comes in and takes it forward. And they take it right up to market commercialization. So it's discovery to market commercialization. And that's because you're looking at high-risk discovery-led innovations. Biotech is all about high risk. But then this is a difficult path, as I said, very risky path. But it's important that we follow this, and we do have the complete infrastructure, the components, the framework that allows for this to move on. We have created this enabling ecosystem, and for this, these are, who better than you would recognize this, the very, very important 4 pillars on which we have to focus if we have to move research from laboratory to commercialization. we have to ensure financing of high-risk innovation, access to risk capital, connecting with stakeholders, access to market. And today I am very pleased that our incubation network that we have set up across the country has come forward to take up the role to do this, connecting this or working on all these 4 pillars. And the events like this that you are organizing are again important. One important point to keep in mind is that, as I said, the government has played a very important role in becoming a stakeholder, in becoming a partner. It's no longer just a funding agency. If you look at, and those of you who've been involved with BIRAC or you've been involved with Startup India or with other DST, Atal Innovation Mission, you'll see it's not just about handing over a check and saying, well, here is your fund or grant. Complete your 18 months or 24 months and come and give us a progress report and we move on. No, it's no longer like that. They are partners with the startups as they move in their journey. And that is why today, when any startup succeeds or moves one ladder forward in their, one step forward in their ladder, it gives us immense, immense pleasure. I still get so pleased when I hear from startups and they say, well, we've moved on to the next phase. We've now got our funding, we've raised funding, we've got this success. It gives immense pleasure because we've been partners in taking this forward. And I think this enabling ecosystem now needs to be strengthened. You also have to remember one thing, that the government was never, ever a venture capital fund. It was never a VC fund. But the government took that risk. They became partners. We've set up fund of funds. And in our discussions with all the VCs, one point that came out very clearly was, with the government's participation, we have actually mitigated a lot of risk because there is a lot of technical due diligence. And the government would definitely not put in its money where you know for sure it's not going to make success. Yes, we know that the percentages would be low. But then, as I said, you have a few success stories, and that sort of sets off all that you have invested in all these years. And that's really what the government has also done, working closely with you. Today, we have so many funds of funds, whether it's BIRAC, whether it's METI fund of funds, whether it's DPIIT, or even now Atal Innovation Mission. They're all getting into these fund of funds and partnerships so that we could seed fund, leap fund, many of them. And that's really the role which BIRAC has played. And I'm not going to go into many details. I know you have others from BIRAC, Shishendu and others who are coming in. I'm sure they'll share information with you on each of these schemes, each of these products. But just remember one thing. BIRAC was the first agency which took this very important decision that they start investing even in students. You have an e-Yuva grant, which is given to young students at the postgraduate level. And now, of course, they're going even into the undergraduate and others, so that you start inculcating that spirit of entrepreneurship in them. Allow them to take that risk and then say, okay, do you want to get onto a PhD and a research pathway, or you want to get into an entrepreneurial pathway? And of course, moving on then to market, and we have large number of products, and that's the ecosystem. All of you come from this ecosystem, so I'm not going to spend so much of time. Our number of incubators is moved up. This is a big grant, and I'm sure these numbers are outdated now because my slide is about a couple of months old. Manish Devan and others from BIRAC will update it with the latest numbers. But what is interesting is that's the appetite for taking new ideas forward. Each time we put out a call, we get large number of applications. So we've already excited the researchers to get onto this path of entrepreneurship. Why do many of them stay back? Is because of what we've just discussed. Probably they don't have enough mentorship to be able to guide them how to take their ideas forward. So you need both technical and business mentorship. You need connections with networks. And you also need to learn from the success stories. And I'm so glad that today you have this fireside chat with the successful entrepreneurs, because these success stories, there's nothing like hearing a success story. because success obviously multiplies, and that then gives more opportunities to others to take it forward. There's a very strong ecosystem that the government built through a national biopharma mission. And many of you in this virtual meeting today have been part of this mission as it built up. And the reason I'm sharing this particular slide with you is that when this ecosystem was built, we were looking at vaccines and biotherapeutics, but I don't think at any point of time, any of us ever had an idea that during the life of this mission, we would be faced with a crisis or a pandemic like COVID. And this mission would then stand up and respond to it. So you see, whatever you invest in gives you returns. They may be immediate returns or long-term returns, but the returns come in is because we had this ecosystem ready. We could with great confidence say that when we were asked to respond to COVID, we said we will have a scientific-based response. And we looked at both product development and ecosystem strengthening, as I mentioned to you. And you all know the wonderful story of how India responded to the COVID in terms of the science. How did we respond? Who did we rely on? It was these researchers from the academia, from the industry, from the startups. These networks which had been built, they were taken forward, and we sort of delivered based on that. You all know that our diagnostic kit success story is well known. In less than 60 days or 90 days, we had achieved 100% self-sufficiency. And here also, let me just share a very small incident with you. And I think I saw some of you involved in this diagnostic story in this virtual gallery, and I'm sure many of them would be there. I recall that it was in March of 2020 when we realized that we would need a lot of diagnostic kits. And I think, if I remember correctly, it was 26th or 27th of March when the first diagnostic kit of my lab got its clearance from DCGI. I had a meeting with all the diagnostic kit startups and other industries and said, can you produce these numbers that we're looking at? And at that point of time, we thought probably 10 lakh kits is going to be a large number. We didn't realize we were going to move into such large infections. The point that came up was, yes, we have supply chain disruptions, but today we can develop the kits, but all our reagents are imported. Now, how do we do that? And then we had a group and we set up a call. C-Camp came forward. All those startups who were manufacturing reagents came together, and NBRIC was set up. And NBRIC, those of you who have worked with it, I'm sure the C-Camp team over here will know AMTZ at Visakhapatnam. All these came together. We put in an aggregated demand and they gave us an assured supply. So you see, there were ways in which we could innovate and we could look at models of implementation, but we could do this because we had the confidence that we had a pool of startups who could deliver. We created a wonderful complete framework for vaccine development. All academic research institutes, industries came forward, and they started delivering. And look at the number of platforms that we could build. This was not just by the industry. The industry partnered with academic institutes, the startups came forward. Each of them were involved in different components. And today we all know our success with the large number of vaccines that we've been able to deliver to our immunization program, the world's largest immunization program for COVID. This has given us confidence that it's not just COVID. Moving beyond COVID, and this is what our startups responded. A large number of solutions, whether it was sanitizers, whether it was PPEs, whether it was masks, whether it was ventilators. You talk about patient monitoring devices, the icebox to deliver the vaccines to the last mile. There were a whole lot of them. And all these are now being deployed in other scenarios, which would be beyond COVID. So I think before I conclude, what am I trying to give as a message? That there are key components of an innovation R&D ecosystem, which we have focused on. We focused on the capacities. We've created the human resource. We've created the infrastructure. We have created centers of excellence, translational centers, repositories, biorepositories. That's how the whole COVID program happened. I mean, you look at today, we have everything within the country for COVID. We had the biorepositories here, we had our animal facilities here, we had the different models available. We had the immunoassay tests being done here. So we created a whole lot of shared infrastructure, which was accessible. And even the large companies like which have gone into vaccine manufacturing, they have been looking at how they could use these collaborations to the advantage of saying how can we deliver very quickly. And that's really how we went through this very quick process of vaccine development. Our incubation centers, our think technology clusters, these are all, this is what we've created. Now, if after having created this vibrant ecosystem, which, and I'm sure many of you will agree with me, is today at par with the global best ecosystem that we create. We've created sister innovation hubs. What now is required is, how do we help our startups to scale? How do we give them that confidence that we are with you? What do they need? They need the finances. They need the strength behind them to help them to sustain. And I think there are a lot of challenges which we need to address. We have to look at building capacities for future emerging technologies. So it's no longer the low-hanging fruits that we have to work on. While we've created an ecosystem, but we still have a challenge in moving technology from lab to commercial scale. Yes, the industry-academia partnership needs to be strengthened. One COVID or a biopharma example is not just enough. We must have this in each sector. We must have more co-development partnerships, and every sector now can really give results as the biopharma sector did for COVID. We don't need to have another pandemic to be able to deliver. And what we need to do is to get the right skilling done so that we have quality leadership that can help us to do. And of course, we have many ways in which we are trying to do this. We are connecting universities with industry. We have tried to connect the education system with the translation innovation ecosystem. But it's very important that we break the silos. We break those boundaries which exist between academia, between industry, also between disciplines. Many a times there are interdisciplinary needs, and I'm so pleased to see that now our incubation centers actually focus on these interdisciplinary areas, and you have them because these convergence of disciplines is what's going to give us success. And most importantly, we need to collaborate for impactful delivery of our missions. It's all about connecting, converging, and collaborating. And this is what, because you see in COVID times, you talk about India making a global impact. We have done that. Our vaccines have reached all over the world. Our diagnostic kits are today in global markets. So if we can do it for one sector, many other sectors are doing. Before this, I was speaking to a few startups in the agri sector, in the energy sector. They're already moving out of the, to different places. So what is it that we need to do to achieve this exponential growth? For all the VCs who are here, I think this is a message that you must take back. We do need to have a strong innovation ecosystem. It's all about making our startups more innovative. Because if they're more innovative, then they would be able to develop affordable and accessible innovations which would address not just local, but also global needs. But we have to remember one thing: if it's innovation, we have to look at discovery-based, knowledge-driven innovation. We've sort of achieved our initial success. We've had low-hanging fruits, but we must invest in disruptive and emerging technologies. That's the future market. If we have to make place for ourselves, for the country, for our startups, we have to find these special niche areas. It is all about high risk, but if there's a high risk, there's a high reward. But that high reward gives us very, very high returns. So our call to action is clearly high-risk innovation needs high investment. But remember, I know all the VCs do look at what their returns are going to be. It's those high rewards that we'll get. It's all a matter of time. And if we have to transform exponentially, we have to innovate. Give this message to all the startups that unless and until they innovate, they're not going to make a difference. And we must remember one thing. Innovation is across the borders. It really doesn't have any boundaries or knows no borders. Innovations which have been done in India, we've seen impacts being made in other developing countries, and as I've said, in global markets as well. Many of our innovations that we have done for our maternal child, etc., you see huge deployments in Africa and other countries. So innovations are common because it's all about that common goal. COVID was a common goal. Monkeypox today is a common goal. One Health is a common goal for all of us. AMR is a common problem. It's not different in India. It's not different in Asian countries. It's not different in, yes, there are certain local problems that we have which we need to address, but it's one healthy world. And for that, we have to work together with our innovations so that we have a sustainable universe. We do need to look at the climate change and others. So thank you all for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with you, and for all the young startups who are here. This is a quote which I like, and I would like to close with this, which Albert Einstein had said, that a person who never made a mistake never tried anything new. So you will make mistakes because you are trying new things, but never give up. Keep trying new things. Make a mistake, come back to the drawing board, never take that as a failure, that there is no failure in this. You will come back with much more success. And this is the beginning of a wonderful interaction you're going to have with the VCs. I'm sure you'll do well in your pitching, and I'm sure there will be a lot of you who will get your checks maybe 3 months or 1 year down the line. So thank you, Dr. Edina, for giving me this opportunity, and all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I mean, like the millennial generation, whenever they want to build a startup, it's all about tomorrow. I need to get money. We want to take it for granted. But when we look at the journey, what you have shown from 2012, especially with the big grant, I think it's really amazing, like how far we have come. And also looking at the global health tech investments, it's been a high rocket now. Like previously, it's what ed tech, fintech, but I think health tech is really booming, and it's all because of your efforts. So many thanks, ma'am, and also please stay for the next panel discussion. So we'll have a very good discussion about how I think your energy now, how the incubator CEOs are capturing. Great, thank you, ma'am. So with further overdue, I would like to invite Mrs. Deepanvita Chattopadhyaya. Ma'am, we are delighted to have you here. So now the stage is yours. So we have Suman Gupta ji here, Rajgopal sir here, Muthu Singaram sir, and I'm just not able to find Jitendra sir and Madhusudan sir. Here, sir. Jitendra sir is here. Okay. Hi, sir.
There is some other voices if
I will mute them, ma'am. I'm just not able to find out who are the panelists, so that's why I have difficulty.
I'll tell you, Muthu, now I can see.
I can see.
Muthu Sundaram. And then you have, of course, Dr. Madhusudan Rao, and Dr. Rajgopal is already here.
Yeah.
And Dr. Suman Gupta, I saw her. So she must also be.
Yes, she's here.
Yes. And now we need Madhu.
Madhu and Suresh.
No, he's there.
Yeah, Madhu is there, and now we need Suresh.
Yeah, good afternoon.
I'm also here, ma'am. Are you able to see me?
Okay. Yes, now I can see.
Madhu, sir?
Yes,
Yeah.
he's there.
Is there?
Very
Okay.
good.
Just need to find.
He's Nalam Rao.
Nalam Rao. Okay.
That's right.
It's I'll just spotlight. Great. Okay, ma'am. Deepanvita ma'am, stage is yours now.
So, thank you very much. And actually, there's a little.
I'll mute, ma'am. Now I'll mute everybody.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, can you please
Yeah.
unmute yourself, please?
So a very warm welcome and to the Whale Tank program. I have to congratulate FABA, the entire team, Dr. Edina, Dr. Saxena, and the entire team for this exciting program. But what really struck me is the Whale Tank presentations by startups are tomorrow. What you are doing today is to, again, there is some echo maybe. Okay.
Co-hosts, like all the panelists, can you please mute?
The panelists are muted.
Yeah, yes, sir. Now they're
Thanks.
muted. Yes.
Okay, no problem.
Sure.
Right. So what's important is that today's session is to prepare the stage for tomorrow. And that is a very whale kind of a behavior. Because if you look at the social behavior of whales, they're warm-blooded mammals. They nurture their young ones. So it's like incubators, very much who nurture startups, very young startups. Whales communicate and sing to each other. So the incubator community and the startup community and the ecosystem is actually represented very well through the behavior of the social behavior of whales. And the other thing is they're very rarely predatory in nature, unlike sharks. So here we are talking of VCs, we are talking of presenting our startups to VCs, but we are saying that in the background, where the incubators are here, the entire ecosystem is backing you, and there is a congenial atmosphere for the startups. So with that, we have a fantastic panel of incubators, 6 whales, if I can say, with you today. And let's have some good time, a whale of a time. I'm guessing we have about 40 minutes in our hand. And let me start with each one of you talking about, briefly presenting your incubator so that everybody knows who you are and what you're doing. And I'll start with Dr. Madhusudan Rao, please.
Thank you. Thank you, organizers, for the opportunity to be here. I'm Madhusudan Rao. I'm CEO of Athal Incubation Center at CCMB. We started 5 years ago, and our only focus is on life sciences. Could it be biotechnology or healthcare? And in these past 5 years, we have established a fairly decent operable infrastructure for any startups in life sciences to work. And one of the things that we realized early is, because we are also a startup of an incubator, one of the important things that all of them need, startups need, especially the networking. That's where we think we are trying our best to provide as much of counsel for the startups, because they all come green behind the ears in one aspect or the other. So it's our job to make sure that they get correct advice from the professionals. So our mentorship network has been quite extensive, and I hope we want to expand it further. And recently we've been able to attract some kind of a funding, so that, in fact, we realized maybe in third year or fourth year that funding is also one attractive feature for startups to come, because they're always bootstrapped. After 1 year, they need money. So if you can offer that, that becomes an additional attraction for them to come. Yeah, thank you very much.
Come to Muthu Singaram.
Hi, thank you for having me here. I'm from IIT Madras, HTIC incubator. We only work with healthcare, basically. We have right now over 40 startups working out of here, and we support them in terms of mentoring, equipment, and whatever they require from that. So that's, as you said, quick. That's a quick introduction from HTIC.
Oh, wonderful. That's short and quick. Dr. Soman Gupta, please.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Suman Gupta, the CEO for the incubator at RCB. So I think just to tell you briefly about RCB, RCB is an autonomous institute by DBT, and it has also got the status of an institute of national importance and associated with UNESCO as a Category 2 center. So in addition to the academic and training programs which RCB conducts, it also has the responsibility to, to set up the bio incubator and to provide this facility to the entrepreneurs. So I joined the setup about 4.5 years back, and my job was to set the incubator at RCB. So I had that, the initial interesting journey to set this up. And with my team, we are able to set this up, and now we are working at 95% occupancy with about more than 40 startups being supported by us. So we are also supporting startups in the healthcare sector, since that is our focus area. And we have about 35,000 square feet covered area, which is dedicated for incubation, and 20,000 square feet is dedicated for the lab themselves. So our startups are ranging from anti-infectives to vaccines to nutraceutics to sanitations, etc. And I feel proud to say that about 14 products have come out of the work that has been going on here by our startups. And I'm really proud to be here in this great event and with the great panelists. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Thank you.
That is Suresh Kumar.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the organizers for giving me the opportunity. I'm Suresh Kumar, the Executive Director of PAG-STEP, the incubation center associated with PAG College of Technology, Coimbatore. And we have been supported by DST in the year 1998 and started the incubation activities about 2 decades before. About 3 years before, we have been supported by BIRAC for establishing the BioNest as part of the PAG-STEP initiative. And so far, we have supported more than 200 plus incubators in the last 2 decades. And we are also exploring as a startup incubator in the area of biotechnology, and a lot of learnings in the last 3 years. Thank you, and look forward to hear from panelists. Also, I represent the ISBA, the Indian Steps in Business Incubators Association, as the president of the association, and happy to have Deepanvita, who is the past president of the association. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh. Can we have Dr. Jitendra Kumar, please? Jitendra.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Deepanvita. I run Bangalore Bioinnovation Center, which is a state-run incubation center, as against the other incubation centers which are hosted by the academic institutions. So this is one unique model. So far we have, so it started in 2016, and I was there as a founder director after moving from IKP Knowledge Park. It has so far incubated some 100 companies. One of the reasons for large number of startups is because state machinery is there to have lot of startups and give to us for incubation. And we have some 25 startups have graduated. Most of them have set up their own facility. We have launched 45 products. We take pride in launching these products through at a state level function. And we have around 60,000 square feet of built up space with a huge infrastructure. It's a joint collaboration between a state government and the DBT. And DBT has external support, but it comes under the administrative control of state government. I look forward to
it. Now, of course, Professor Rajgopal, who is also kind of a host for this meeting.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Deepanvita, and I thank Professor Redana Garu and Dr. Jagdish. So having me here. So I just want to introduce my the incubator center, the University of Hyderabad. That is called ASPIRE. ASPIRE is nothing but Association for Scientific Pursuit for Innovation Research Enterprises. Was established in 2018 and is a Section 8 company. And the ASPIRE manages all innovations and entrepreneurial activities at UOH at University of Hyderabad.
we have majorly, three incubator. Those are an Aspire Bionest is nothing but, the DBT supported one, and Aspire Tide and Aspire TBI. And all together, we have about 50,000 SFT, the area. And in Bionest, we mostly, focused on these healthcare and biopharma allied areas of life sciences, agriculture, and industrial biotechnology. So we have all, relevant facilities in our center. And we have about altogether about 55 companies. I mean, the startups. And as other people also said, there are about 19 people have graduated, maybe because some of them may not be, may have discontinued, but some of them, they went to their own facilities. And there are about a good, excellent products have released from our centers. Like, we have a, probably in our last the Bio Expo, there was one of the company, that Genomics, who have, using a disruptive technology, they have their own PCR, with cost of just 30,000 rupees, you can have a PCR in the lab. So we also tested in our laboratory. It was really working out very well. So such kind of, the innovations and, disruptive technology has happened in our center. So, and then maybe, later we will discuss about other things. Thank you very much. Thank you for.
Thank you. So now you really know we have a wonderful group of incubators today to answer some of the difficult questions that many of you face. So just wanted to ask Dr. Madhusudan Rao, Madhu, you highlight one achievement that makes you feel satisfied with all the hard work that you're doing. Really, you feel, yes, what is that? Dr. Rajgopal, I'm not going to ask because he has already mentioned about 30M. So, but to you, I want to know, what is that? Can you highlight?
One of the thing I realized is many of them need a lot of advice on their if they're deep science, they need a lot of advice as they go along. In my opinion, because I'm supported by CCMB and other very good institutes around me, I'm able to bring that advice to these people, and they feel very comfortable. In fact, because I've been in this ecosystem for almost 30 years, so I know most of the people by name. So that helps me in bringing in the right connections. And I think that's why people keep coming back. We are a bit stuck up on the area that we have got, but I think that is something that makes me feel very good. And we also had something like 75, 80 startups that went through, depending upon how you, what you call them, virtual as real or not, physical or not, but otherwise we are, that is something that I feel very early I realized mentorship is what makes them survive. I think that's where I feel a bit satisfied for having brought in at least for 10 companies the right advice which have graduated very well. So in my opinion, mentorship is all that matters, and I think I feel good about it.
So I think being able to organize mentors and being able to provide the right mentorship, technology mentorship especially, to deep tech startups is an achievement that you're proud of. Dr. Suman Gupta, what is your measure of success as an incubator?
Okay. So as a measure of success, we all know we measure it by number of products, IPs, etc. Like, so, but what I feel important when we are able to clear the roadblocks of our startups, because we want to expedite their journey from the idea stage to the commercial stage. So when we are able to remove the roadblocks in their journey is what I feel is important, and that's that's the measure of success for me. Like the way we are able to do that.
All measures have to be measurable. So I think what you said is something which is qualitative, How do we
Right.
translate into a quantitative measures? That's something that you and I will have a chat on.
Sure.
Jitendra, what is your measure of success for an incubator? Need not be your incubator, incubators in general, or even you can talk about your incubator, especially we are talking of life sciences incubators. Can you unmute
You're on
yourself?
mute.
I'm sorry, bio incubation centers, life science incubation centers, the measure of success is how many deep science incubation incubators you can bring, attract, because that is very important. Otherwise, your pipeline will dry. Second is how you have, when they came, what was the readiness level of the technologies or the business they were in, and when they exited, what value addition that life science incubator should have provided. I would think that at least one exit point that we should be venture ready. There should have been some venture capital infusion so that they can graduate. Then during that process of from the ideation or to the exit, how incubation centers have added value. One could be the mentorship. It can be measured by the hours they have put in and their inputs, like whether it has helped. Second is the intellectual property IP generation, because that is what your mentorship has added value to. Third is, have you been able to provide the skill of facility? Because that is where very important startups are fumbling. They do proof of concept, but we do not have incubation centers who have 100-liter fermenter, 500-liter fermenter, or BSL-3 facility, GMP. So have you been able to provide those facilities to them to scale up, at least pilot scale, so that they can attract venture capital after showing this at least pilot scale results? How they have, if there are medical devices and diagnostics which are low-hanging fruit, have they been able to do a prototyping and launch their product is soft launch? So, launch their product. So has incubation center provided that platform where they can launch the product? Because startups, nobody will know.
From here, Jitendra, let me go to Muthu and ask, because when you talk of medical devices, I cannot but bring in Muthu, because HTIC huge focus on this. And so what is your incubator's core value proposition?
So I think the important part here is to be able to attract the number of startups in to start with. If we have a vibrant ecosystem, like now we have 30, 40 people, startups here, we have almost 300 people in the center, which makes others work with each other. I think among themselves, they create better value than us creating the value, because they're all like peers. I'm not talking about age here. Even the older ones are happy to talk to the younger ones, and the younger ones are happy to talk to the older ones. So I think what we set out to do, and I think we've done a good job on that, is to create that environment where people feel comfortable to come. So we now are getting not only in around Chennai or Tamil Nadu, we are having startups coming from the north willing to move to Chennai, which is good. So I think that's something we've done really well. And we've also never been unwilling to support any other incubators which needs any help from us. As you know, all my equipment I have open to any incubator to use and I have and no one here objects to that. And IIT is very open to allowing all the equipment here be used by everybody, and we don't really worry whether we don't worry about charging them or whatever. We just let them use them. So I think we've done well in that sense. I think to
This
keep it
is a
short
very
and give the others.
important point, Muthu, you raised. As a success of an incubator, probably it's also the ecosystem you build. It is just not the startups and your values, but it's the ecosystem. And here I have to turn to Suresh. Suresh, do you think as a successful incubator, you are an influencer? And how does an incubator CEO become an influencer in the ecosystem?
Sir, please unmute. So I'm
Yeah.
just trying to mute everybody because there's noise coming. So whenever you're talking, please unmute and talk.
Ma'am, according to me, the incubation center or the CEO is an influencer in building the ecosystem, right? And when you ask me about the aha moments of the incubation, for a person like me who have been started this career without knowing what is incubation, and now saying incubation has been looked as a tool right from the private, government, corporate, state governments, and everywhere. Right, we feel that we have influenced the ecosystem. Right, we are the early starters of the incubation centers, and since we have been very persistent in achieving what we want to do, and we keep on continuously working towards the requirements of the startups. Because if I look back 2 decades before, when we started an incubation center, what are the objectives that we declared is not relevant now. So every 3 years, 5 years, we see the new technologies coming up. Startups are coming up with new technological areas, new products coming up, and unless otherwise, an incubation center is able to meet the aspirations of the startups and provide the services, right? It's very difficult for any one of us to be a successful incubation center. So I'm happy that if you are able to meet the requirements of the startups, aspirations of the startups, keep on adding your services, keep on deleting your services, and keep building your activities based on the requirements of our customers, then we become an influencer in the ecosystem and people will start looking at us. And the second point is, once you have been able to achieve that, then we'll become a resourceful organization where mentors can look at us, the investors will come to us, and a lot of government programs will try to experiment through us. We become outreach partners, and many programs has been tested. And we become a tool not only for the startups, but also for various agencies to test their programs and make it big. To scale the programs also. So that's where I'm looking at an incubation center can be an influencer for the ecosystem, all stages, all players of the ecosystem, and at all stages of the startup life cycle.
A very important statement, Suresh. So, because this is a dynamic industry, if I can call incubation as an industry. And there are so many externalities. We cannot just talk about ourselves. We have to be in the collaborative mode, in the ecosystem mode all the time.
And before that, I want to compliment you, ma'am. Because one of the major challenges that we have is the manpower for the incubation centers, CEOs for the incubation centers. And
local power as well.
Yeah. And the lighter mode, you have created a lot of CEOs from IKP. You have given a lot of CEOs from IKP to the incubation ecosystem, and I want to make a mention about this. It's not about creating startups, creating leaders. You gave an opportunity for many of the youngsters, and they have become the CEOs, and they are leading the other incubation centers too across the country. Right? Just I want to make it that also strengthens the ecosystem. It's as an incubation center. Right, we have contributed, and what we are looking at is it becomes a role model for people like us, right? And see to that our team members also should lead the incubation centers or any of the entrepreneurship related activities in other institutions too.
Actually, 5 so far. But we've been also in this business for the last 22 years. Now,
and it should also be a factor to be mentioned for measuring the success of an incubation center.
Yes, measuring success. So my mentor, Dr. Balamanian, said, if 50% of my employees do not become entrepreneurs, I am a failure. So Bala's company, Bala thinks 50% of them have to move out of Bala's company to start their own company. So, so that's a very good observation, Suresh. So, the question now I have is, and I will start with Madhu, Dr. Madhusudan Rao. If you can, what are the 2 things that you will change in your ecosystem to make it more vibrant? I'm not saying the Hyderabad ecosystem is not vibrant, but how do you make it even more vibrant? What are the 2 things you want to change?
One of the things that comes to me at top of my list is especially because we are in the healthcare, medtech kind of an area, the places for piloting, piloting any device, a POC or something, having a MOUs with hospitals or similar agencies, that is becoming a bit of a challenge. Where do you test? Places for piloting is one of the challenge I face, because not very many stakeholders come forward to do that. Like if I have a device, I want it to be tested in an ICU or in a hospital kind of a setting. It becomes a challenge for me to make them interested in letting me through their doors. That's one challenge I face. That's something that I will always try to solve. I think it should be a group activity rather than one incubator alone. We have to create that kind of a trust factor and also the necessity factor from the other side of the stakeholders for us to help our startups to go to the next stage, which is always becoming a bit of a challenge for us. And also, we don't have really a strong regulatory pipeline advisors. That somehow I feel it is necessary. We have to build it. It is common for all, and you have done it in case of IP and other things. So even in the regulatory, we'll have to have a ready to go kind of a process sheet for us to go forward. I think places for piloting and regulatory thing, because we are all in healthcare. This is something that I feel we should look at. The other small things are, we didn't anticipate the necessity for bridge funds. We always try to say TRL 1, 2 to 4, but once they reach the 4, where do they go? I mean, we don't have access to that TRL 4 to 6 or 7 kind of money. So these are all the things that come to my mind. I think these are my challenges today. Thank you.
So, Jitendra, if you have to change 2 things in your ecosystem, what would those be?
One challenge I face is, and which is a good requirement from our startups, is how do they connect with the big industries, the established players? Because the industry and startup connect is missing, and I am striving to, I'm trying to able, etc., to do that. However, that's a challenge. I really feel that this is important because it leads to a lot of collaborations. It can have a strategic partnership. It can have funding, and a lot of things can happen. And bigger companies can increase their portfolio of innovation through the startup by acquiring them, etc. in the long run. That is one. So that part I have to do. Second is the early stage venture funding is still, we have been talking for a long time, and I think by now Bangalore should have a stronger, I would have venture funding community, but it has not come up. Most of our startups have sought funds from abroad, which is money, it's kept coming from anywhere, but our ecosystem has to grow. Without that venture funding presence here, I think it will have a bottleneck.
The domestic VCs investing in life sciences. Great. Yeah. Suman, what are the 2 challenges what are the 2 things you want to change in your ecosystem in NCR area?
Yeah, so I think Dr. Rao and Dr. Jitendra have put in very well all the 4 challenges which any healthcare incubator would face. But in addition to that, NCR also faces, I think, in my opinion, one of the challenges that we don't have a very good network with the incubators around like you have in the Hyderabad ecosystem or in the South ecosystem. But in NCR area, we definitely would like to improve on that. Other thing for me particularly is that since we are, not a independent entity in terms of the incubator, we are associated with the host setup of RCB, so which has its positives, but also at certain times there is, certain times we feel that we are not eligible for certain funds because we are not an independent entity, and at times things take longer. So that is something that I would, if I had the option, we could make a change.
Yeah, I can understand. If you're a separate legal entity, probably applying and all that, and maybe even more, and a little more of administrative control also maybe there. So wonderful. That's a very important point. Muthu, if I come to you, what would you say that in the Chennai ecosystem or IIT Madras ecosystem, what are the 2 things you want to change? Or is it perfect?
No, nothing is perfect. We always can improve. We can always improve every time. Just to say, Suman, it's not that easy when you're a separate entity like me, even though I'm associated IIT Madras. So when I don't have any money, IIT Madras says, sorry, you're a separate entity, look after yourself. So there's good and bad either way. So just to
I
add
agree
that.
to that, yes.
Okay. So just to go back to the question, I think the first thing we need to do, not only in Chennai, but in all the ecosystem, is the willingness for us to share. I think we can do a lot better with that. And I keep speaking about this in everywhere you see me, and you must be getting bored me telling me this, but it's something I think we really need to work on. And secondly, I think we should not worry about whether the startup is from our incubator. As long as it's in the vicinity, it's Indian, whatever it is, I think we should provide the support we can, because end of the day, or everything is in the same bucket. So I think these are two things we should work extremely hard to. And in the south, when the startups don't match with our incubator, I do send them to the other incubators within the Tamil Nadu ecosystem. For example, if they're heavily dependent on a hospital, I can't cope with that because I don't have a hospital close by. So I send them to SRMC. So if it's very heavy into biotech, I send it to next door to my biotech incubator or to Tirupati, cross border. So there you are. So these are some of the things I think we should all start looking at and see as how well we can do. So that's my.
That's a very good point of sharing that you mentioned, Muthu. But if we can, it does not fit into what we are doing, we give it to some other incubator. Of course we do. But there's a question that one incubator raised, asked me, how do we share revenues? There is yet not a very transparent method of revenue sharing with all the incubators. And I know we don't have time for this, but we should take this up at some point. If a startup is being incubated by 3 incubators, the startup cannot give money to all the incubators for rent or whatever services. How do we actually, in a transparent manner, decide?
Can I respond to that? So for example,
very briefly.
I'll respond very quickly. What we do is, if it is shared by 2, we half our whatever we take, and we ask the other incubator half what they take. So if they're on a rental model, they will not charge 5,000; they'll charge 2,500. Our equity model goes to 2% instead of 4%. So we split it right down the way.
Oh, that's a very clear and very transparent way of dealing with it. And these are learnings, Dr. Redana, when you put 6 incubators together and 6 incubator CEOs who are experienced together. Sorry. So, Suresh, you are from Coimbatore. So your challenges cannot be the same challenges like what Bangalore or Chennai or Hyderabad would have. Or are they the same?
Ma'am, before going to the answer, I want to comment on Dr. Suman's concern that NCR region is not vibrant as far as networking is concerned. But I want to inform her that ISBA has been started closely working with SIDBI. And last week, we have just launched the NCR region, and the SIDBI is going to support the incubator network. And through ISBA will be leading it, and it is exclusively for Delhi NCR region. And a lot of activities are going to come there. And ISBA is just for the namesake, right, organization's sake, but you have to lead it, and we are going to have the team of 4 team members, and we'll be doing it in next 15 days or 1 month's time. But the initial meeting has happened, and about 10 incubators. We had a discussion last week just to kickstart the activities, and other MOUs and other things has to be. And it's a 2-year project that we'll be taking it, and with the support of SIDBI, and then we'll be moving forward. So this is to share the good news to Dr. Suman on this line. The second thing is about the change that we want to bring in. If you look at right, the number of incubators have increased in every region, and it's going to get increased further also. Now, what happens is, if you look at the support extended by the incubators, all of them are fighting a small pie from ideation to proof of concept or prototype development. Right, all the incubation centers are focusing there, and we are playing a number game in that. And now it has become like 40 startups, 50 startups, 75 startups in a period of 1 year and kind of thing. But if as a mature incubator, now if you look at the stages at which, right, from ideation to scaling up, right, the percentage of startups which have developed the product but have scaled up, I'm not talking about becoming unicorn or, right, it is about taking 1,000 pieces to the market or having sold about 1,000 pieces, 1,000 numbers in the market. That itself is a small scaling up. There I find that we have not achieved the percentage, or we have not achieved the scale in that. So every incubation, now we talk about the space that has been earmarked, right? The number of startups that we can have, number of funding schemes, right? Whatever has been challenged, right? Now seed funding to some extent up to 20 lakhs or 30 lakhs is not a big challenge. So the change that I want to bring in on the ecosystem, right? Not only at PIG level or even at the association level is, I want to echo the voice of the other members, right? We have to look at how collaboratively we can work on. And that's how, so you can remember about a year and a half before we started discussing about the distributed incubator model. We, before 1.5 years, before people are aware about virtual incubation. And then co-incubation has been started discussing about it. And today we have to look at other models of co-incubation, virtual incubation, hub and spoke model, hybrid model, right? And we have to look at how each of our strengths in the niche area can be leveraged. And every incubators which has put more than 5 years has proven something as their specialization. Either it can be IKP or Venture Center, IIT Bombay, or IIT Madras, right? Whomsoever has been in this field for more than 7 years, 10 years, have got something built as the niche area. And that we have to bring into the Tier 2 cities or Tier 3 cities like us, so that we can also look at our product startups have become a scaled startup. And we can also see the happiness that our incubated products have been there in the market too. So that percentage is less, and we want to see with the help of the ecosystem, from product to the scaled up startups percentage we have to increase on. So these are the 2 cents that I had to share with you.
Okay, wonderful. Professor Rajgopal, do you have maybe very briefly? Yes.
No, I just want to make it 2 points. There's first thing, the CEOs of the any startups, they should have good cordial relationship, and they should build a network in between those all these companies. What we are trying here, we are time to time we organize the CEOs meet to exchange their ideas. That's I don't know, one of the CEOs they have mentioned. I think Dr. Muthusingaram mentioned that something they have to open up their ideas, they think they should share each other. And we have a few examples in our incubation centers. Dr. Uday, I think maybe he's in the audience. Dr. Kusala and Dr. Jagan and Dr. Nagesh Rao, Dr. Cherish. These are the people, and sometimes Dr. Bennett. They come forward and they discuss and organize some events. Themselves, they organize an event and share their ideas. And if there is anything, they exchange and they also collaborate. The collaboration is very important for a successful, for a incubating, they should be a collaborative work. That's what we are trying to see that. The other things, and we are also, sometimes, before COVID, we organize a lot of conferences. We invite a lot of, the industrial persons to share their, their experiences and coming within all the IPs, not only the patenting or their products. They share with the our CEOs, so that they will be having a personal interaction with them, so that they can have one-to-one interaction. If they have any kind of let's say they can also be invest in their companies. For example, so I'll tell you one 30M Genomics.
No, I don't. We will have to, because I was told that we now have just 15 minutes.
Okay,
it's not till 5, but the session is till 4:45, and I will also have to take a few questions. So what I will do is, just to wrap up the session, I will just throw some rapid fire questions to our very smart and experienced CEOs to see their entrepreneurial capability. And here we go. And in 30 seconds, you have to flat answer. So to Muthu, as an incubator CEO, my business is to dash dash. What is that?
To learn more.
If I ask you, as an incubator CEO, my business is to
learn more.
To learn more. Wonderful. To Suresh, something you have learned from a startup?
Don't worry about the failure, but fail fast and keep going. It's also applicable to the incubation center.
Wonderful. Suman, do you want to be an entrepreneur? If yes, why? If not, why?
Yes, I would like to be. Love the challenge that they face every day.
Okay. Madhu, a hard decision that you took and you regret.
Not hard decision took and regret. It's not much, I guess, but sometimes I could provide a right kind of advice to one company in very early in our growth, and that has moved out and did very well outside. I could have done that probably, but I was also a kind of a green behind the years as far as incubation is concerned.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And that's why I said mentorship is crucial for it.
Jitendra, as an incubator CEO, my business is to, can you fill in the gaps?
My business is to nurture startup companies.
Of course, the last question goes to Dr. Rajgopal. Something you've learned from a startup.
That's better than we say that better than the best. So
okay, so you have to be better than the best. So you have to be at the top. So okay, so with this, I hope all of you enjoyed what we discussed. This is useful. And Dr. Jagdish, do we open it up for a few questions? We still have 10 minutes. Are there questions for the CEOs? I see one, this is more of an observation. No, this is actually a question. The question is from Suresh Pusala. Do you want to ask yourself, Suresh?
Yes, thank you, Deepanvita madam. Well done, panelists. My question is, one of the drawbacks with all the incubation sites that I ventured around to find myself to do a startup. I did go to CCMB, and I'm in Bionest, and I'm at VCR Park in Vizag as well. The important thing that's missing for a healthcare startup is from proof of concept to translation is very critical from bench to bedside. I think Madhu brought up this point very nicely. So the regulatory guidance and also regulatory assistance around how to go about for a scientist to move to a hospital is missing in almost all the incubators at this point. That's my point.
See, this is more of a comment. Anybody wants to respond by saying how this can be changed or improved? Jitendra?
Yes, we have tried to solve this problem by forging links with hospitals and forming a committee, biosafety committee, ethics committee, etc., and try to streamline the process. Suppose if somebody wants to do testing in the hospital, we would connect them to the hospital, and this connection is not just superficial. We will actually make sure that this happens. For example, at CG Hospital, Narayana and all, many devices and trials have been conducted through our intervention.
So the question actually is, what is the incubator site doing to provide assistance to startups in understanding the regulatory landscape, ma'am? That is the challenge.
So, yeah, so in that context, we had set up a state level committee which mentors the startup about the regulatory challenge. And one of the officers who sits in our committee is from the state level CDSCO or person who sits in a CDSCO office at the state level. So he escalates the matter to the center. So if there is any delay or anything that startup is facing any problem, that is solved. However, your question about mentoring for startup for regulatory challenge, that also that committee does and addresses those questions. In COVID time, it was very, very prominent. And now also it happens on a, some quarterly basis. But incubate, as you are right, incubation centers should have the expertise in that, and they should have the regulatory courses. We do actually. We have in Bangalore Bioinnovation Center, we have a 3 months regulatory course, clinical development, etc. So that we conduct.
Yeah, I can tell you from our side, we also connect to regulatory experts. And also, please note that BIRAC organizes every month, last Friday, I think, there is a session where regulatory experts, IP experts, and all other experts are available to answer your questions. And there are people from the CDSCO and other places. Okay, Dr. Ravi Shekhar Anantula had raised his hand. So any question? Ravi?
Yes, Deepanvita. So as Dr. Uday Saxena has mentioned in his inauguration, so we know that most of the scientists have the problem of getting this access to the business and making those products marketable. So how can we expect? I'm also a scientist by study, so I'm started my startup. So how can you people help me in learning about those skill and getting the access to my products? What kind of platforms could be helpful?
Can anybody wants to take up, and then I will also talk about what we are doing. But anybody wants to take up this? Yeah, Nitendra.
See, there are entrepreneurship courses that Bangalore Bioinnovation Center has done with the support of DST, and DST supported only for 1 year, but we are continuing, where we focus on biotech entrepreneurship. It's a 6 weeks course program. Every year it happens 2 times. You can enroll. We teach we get the experts from various areas and teach. It's specifically meant for scientists who do not have a business background. So basics of business, how actually technology entrepreneurship and commercialization happens. And I think many incubation centers are running that course. DST also is running. And Deepanvita, you can add to that.
Sure, sure. Yeah, as Jitendra mentioned, several incubators actually do workshops and run courses on the business side of it. There are 2 elements. One is the technology side of it, the other is business. And when I'm talking of running a business, it's just not about raising money, it's about governance, is about the processes of conducting a business, various agreements that you need to have when you have a team, the founders agreement, and so on and so forth. So there are a large number, there are several things that you need to understand and learn about. It's just not about a business plan that would make you a successful entrepreneur. It is just not by raising money. It is how do you form a team? What is retention? What are the policies, governance, reporting, annual reportings, and so on. So finance, understanding basics of finance. If you cannot, as a CEO, read a balance sheet, I would be very surprised because accountants will prepare it, CAs will endorse it, but you need to be there to say what you expect. So to become an entrepreneur, you have to have various elements. Of course, you need the idea, you need the technology. You would have, at least in your team, you should have it. Maybe you are not the best suited. Maybe you are the CSO, the chief scientific officer, and maybe you need a professional CEO or a person with some business understanding to come in as a CEO and we do separate workshops on this, and maybe I will invite you. I do not have your mail ID, but I would get back to Faba, and maybe when we run these workshops, we'll invite you.
Sure. Thank you, Deepali.
So is there any other last question? We have 3 minutes to go. Any points that you want to add to Ravi's question? Because it's a very important question. A scientist becoming an entrepreneur, it could be he or she need not have all the qualities, but he or she need to know who to bring in and when is the role of technology kind of takes a backseat and where marketing and finance comes in and processes. So a different kind of team building will be required. And I think that is very important. Anybody wants to add anything to that?
Yeah, Deepanita, can I add some things here?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Deepanita.
And see, I have not seen you, but I know you are Ajit.
Yeah, thank you, Deepanita. I think science is one part, but eventually taking it to regulatory, taking it to marketing, commercialization is so important, and all those are equally important components. I think startups and the incubators will have to kind of look into some of these things and make sure that science is good, science has to be captured well, documentation has to be done very well, IP has to be very, very strong. Again, a lot of audit goes through when you are working with regulators, when you are working with third parties, when you want to out-license the asset or technology. People are looking at it very, very closely. Science is exciting. I think all of us as scientists we feel happy, when our work is recognized. But when it is a business aspect, a lot of other components come in. The regulators will come to the picture. Auditors will come to the picture. Finance, you covered it very well, Deepanita. All of it comes into the picture. So you may not be an expert in all these areas, but like Deepanita said, if you have access to those people, you can tap into their knowledge, tap into their advice, and make it part and parcel of your documentation or dossier that you're preparing so that it is thorough, not just in science, but also in various components that are required to make the project successful and transition into commercialization. Just wanted to bring that up, Deepanita. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajit. And that was Dr. Ajit Kamath from Faber, and he is one of the great startup mentors we have. So thanks, Ajit.
Thank you.
I think Redana mentioned somebody else has a question. Abhishek?
Okay.
And we'll end with your question, Abhishek.
Hi, ma'am. Good afternoon. I wanted to, since we are a panel of incubation centers, I wanted to talk about incubation centers. Should they take equity? Is it really? I mean, especially Muthu sir from IIT Madras, he was talking about taking. I mean, government bodies, they take 2%, 4%. Is that fair, or is it not? Just want to know your thoughts.
Before Muthu answers, there is everything is fair in war, love, and incubation. Muthu?
it may be government.
I think Muthu's screen got frozen.
Yeah, he's actually shocked, Abhishek, by your question. He feels that how can he not take equity? And he is kind of, and if, so he'll come back to us when he's, so yes, Jiten.
No, see, the question is very, it depends upon see, we cannot force on the startups to take it. That is one stand I can take. But however, if startups feel that enough value has been added, then there could be, so the incubation center should be open to it, but cannot make it as a, I think, I may be wrong, but BBC has taken a stand, will not take equities as a policy. Force, but actually you can, it's open to, if we add enough value and if startups looks at it and really sees that, okay, there's enough, so people have given us equity. 5 to 10%. The second component is many grants are inbuilt in that. Say BIRAC seed fund, for example, they say that you have to take equity. So there are various angles involved in it, and incubation centers should have a flexible approach.
Jitendra, that is investment. Investment and deployment of investment is a different thing than an incubator taking equity when a startup comes in. That's about rent versus equity as a deal. So what happens is, over a period of time, most academic incubators have been taking equity in startups, typically 3 to 5% or 2 to 5%, in lieu of all the services that they offer or the institute offers. They say that our rent is very low, we do not have, our charges are low, and you have access to the laboratories, you have access to the library, and so on and so forth. So they take equity. There are two questions involved here. One is it right, morally right to take equity, is I think an angle that Abhishek was talking about. Abhishek, also you have to understand, it is not about when a startup comes in, it could be an upside, that equity means an upside that comes to the incubator if the startup does well. That means there is a skin in the game. So you have to make it work so that you get back the upside at a later date, versus a rental model which gives you money right there. Because people who do not have an host institution that supports in all kinds of infrastructure and other things, the organization like IKP, maybe you have to raise money through rentals. But yes, taking equity is a stand which also depends upon the bylaws of the incubator. There is nothing right or wrong in it. And I think this can also be negotiated. We as in IKP, we do not insist on an equity, but we insist on a rental basis. There are other models that we talk of. If we add value, we take equity, we say, if we can raise money for you, and so on and so forth. So there are different models, Abhishek, that we can discuss later. And I think, Shishir, the organizers are going to throw me out if I speak for another minute, but they won't tell me anything if it's less than a minute. So can you just
just
a quick question. How do you value an early stage company, a startup? Because equity comes with a value, and how do you value? Because most of the guys, incubatees, they come with certain value and certain proposition for their own project. So how you value it for equity?
So I'll come later. I'll request the panelists if anybody wants to talk about it.
I think generally it's a comparison of similar startup in the same game. And if you go to an evaluator, he looks at that and then gives you a number. I mean, because startups usually are engaged in something exploratory, for which there may not be a clear market to go by. So they look for similar companies to the same stage and then put it as a value system. And that's one way of doing it. But you know, the evaluators also can have their own opinion on the value of the product and come up with some numbers. And they have standard calculations. So using those numbers, one can come up with a not very logical, but ballpark figures that are relevant for funding.
Anybody wants to add anything? Otherwise, yes, Muthu, please.
Evaluation.
Sir, please keep it short. I think we are running short of time.
Yeah,
so
very
please
quickly.
keep it short.
Evaluation is very simple. How much you're willing to let go and how much the other guy is willing to pay. That's about it to evaluation. That's it. Thanks.
So it's a negotiation, and we can talk about it. There is a whole science and art of both investment and negotiation. We can have a separate session on it. So I have to stop the session. Shishir.
Ma'am, yeah, thank you so much, ma'am, and also
Selfish.
all, yeah, thank you so much, ma'am, and also all the panelists. I think this discussion can go on and on because it's not so easy to run an incubator. I mean, I worked at European Union and we wanted to build world's largest incubator or accelerator, anything. Only in healthcare, we understood the pain. We started with boot camps, then went to. Okay, so let's stop it here. So once again, thanks everybody, all the panelists for sharing your wisdom. So some of the startups want to get in touch with you. I'll share your details with them. So please help them out. And let's move on to the next session. So we have one talk, which we included in the end because we really need sponsors. And Thermo Fisher is here, and we have Pratap Naidu ji here, who is, let me explain, he is going to talk about cell therapy solutions for every step from discovery to cure. He's a business development manager, cell biology and synthetic biology South Asia at Thermo Fisher Scientific. Pratap Naidu, sir, the stage is yours, and please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jagreesh. So can you confirm that you could able to see my screen?
No, sir, not yet. Can you please share?
Okay, just sharing it. Just a minute. Can you see now?
No, sir, not yet.
Okay, not sure what was it.
It's starting now. Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so thank you very much, organizers for providing the opportunity to Thermo Fisher Scientific. So for the next 15 minutes or so, I would be briefing you about the cell therapy solutions for every step from discovery to cure. So my name is Pratap. I'm the business manager for cell biology and synthetic biology for South Asia, and I've been working in Thermo Fisher Scientific for more than 11 years. So to start with, I'm sure everyone may be familiar that there have been three pillars of therapeutics. So over the several decades, we have witnessed some of the tremendous potential from the small molecules, be it could be an antibiotics or anti-inflammatory molecules, followed by the protein biologics. Now there has been, greater magnitude of discussions about the cell therapies, which provide, a potential cure to many of the the diseases that we are encountering in the medicinal history. So therefore, my presentation would primarily focus on the cell therapy solutions that we at Thermo Fisher Scientific provide, so that you can accelerate your research, so that we can able to have a better, healthier society. So to start with, what exactly is a cell therapy? Cell therapy, in a very simple terms, the transfer of the live cells to patient to replace the damaged cells or to treat a disease. So primarily, if I could able to differentiate the cell therapies, we have an autologous cell therapy, and we also have an allogenic cell therapy. So to dig more, what exactly is an autologous cell therapy is that, as the name itself indicates, that we isolate the patient cell. I mean, the patient blood is isolated, and then the T cells are isolated, modified, and then expanded and reintroduced back to the same patient. So they can be minimally manipulated outside in the body, for example, bone marrow transplants, or genetically modified in case of CAR T cell, immunotherapy. So currently, if you could able to see, around 50% of immune cell therapies are primarily on CAR T cell therapies. So the next one is an allogenic cell therapy, so which is currently accounts for 35% of cell therapies or allogenic cell therapies. As the name itself very clearly indicates that you could able to see it here on the cartoon on the top here, from one to many, so that you could able to scale up, from the off-shelf unrelated donor tissue such as bone marrow to treat many patients. So that's why the allogenic cell therapy is gaining magnitude, so that the cells once isolated can be kept in the master cell bank. Product is ready on demand. Logistics are much simpler, and consistency between the batches is higher as well, which are one of the important points for allogenic cell therapy. So just to provide you the comprehensive understanding what exactly is a chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapy. So, which is nothing but the use of cells to induce an immune response. So you could able to see it here in the slide here. After apheresis, once the blood is isolated from the patients, which usually happens at a hospital setup, and then the cells, from this we isolate the T cells, modify it, and then modify T cell transfusion, and then finally, after the cell expansion, they will be infused back to the same patient in case of autogenic cell therapy. Is that so this is an essentially the process that is being widely followed by most of the biotech companies that are into the cell therapy. So what is the differentiating factor is the the modification of the T cells, the modified T cells transfusion. These are the primary the steps where, depending on the CAR constructs that each biotech is being used, that's where the major modification occurs, and that's where the biotech companies differentiates, although the process remains the same. So the entire process, we call it as a wean to wean process, but essentially the differentiation happens in the modification and the modified T cell transfusion that happens. Moving on. So one of our, the objective of Thermo Fisher Scientific is to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. So for for cell and gene therapy, we have one of the most comprehensive workflow solutions. The fundamental step in the cell therapy is the isolation of the cell. Once you have the the good amount of the required cell, which is the most fundamental important step, or I would call it as the starting steps. Starting from cell isolation, cold chain and biobanking services, cryogenic distribution. The next step is the cell isolation and activation. We have a CTS Dynabeads, CTS Dynamagnet, and a full range of, I'm not going into each and every, the specific products that we have it, but at the same time, if anybody is interested, we would be happy to have a conversations on the same. So once the cell collection followed by isolation and activation, and then the the genetic engineering, the cell engineering that happens if you are working at a lentiviral production system. We have a lipofectamine LVMAX system, or if you are interested in an electroporation system, we have an Neon and CTS grade Xenon system. In fact, we also have the genome editing tools, Cas9 products, as well as a Talon one. So the next, once the cell isolation activation is done, after the the cell engineering process is completed, the next one is the cell culture and expansion, followed by the fill and finish and characterization and the cell distribution. So I'm not going into all of this, but what I wanted to emphasize is that whatever may be your requirement, whatever may be the specific step you are into cell therapy workflow, we have a comprehensive solution. From cell collection to the final cell distribution, we are one-stop solution for all your requirements. So one of the challenge, I was also, listening some of the conversations. One of the challenge that we could able to see it here in the scale up. Once you could able to have your car constructs developed, then if you want to scale up to a large production, which can cater to a larger requirements, you could we encounter lots of challenges. This is a autologous T cell therapy workflow, as I was mentioning here. You start with leukapheresis, which essentially happens in the hospital. Then the cells are shipped to a manufacturing facility. This is where the T cell isolation, activation, and then the cell modification happens. Finally, it will be shipped back to the hospital where the infusion back to the patient happens. But what exactly we could able to see it from this entire process is that it's a labor intensive process, and it requires many manipulations. So it results in the errors. There are many open processes, and it's a complex academic process. So therefore, what we propose is an automation closed modular systems, with a zero failure tolerance would be one of the better solution that we could able to propose a better solution to the present manufacturing the issues that have been encountered. So therefore, you could see it here, and Thermo Fisher is known for one of the most comprehensive solutions, in case of reagents and protocols. We also have existing new platforms for cell isolations and also for electrophoration devices. We also have an analytical endpoint solutions, and finally for the digital library software modules where we could able to integrate this one. So when we have the comprehensive solutions, we thought of putting them into one roof, offer them as a one-stop solutions for all your cell therapy applications. So which can comes under modularity, standardization, compatibility, and scalability is what we could able to support each and every cell and gene therapy users there in the scientific community. So thereby, it can be supported to a wider research as well as the clinical requirements in India or in South Asia. So this is again, the Thermo Fisher solutions for T-cell workflow. This is more in detail one. We have the CTS. You will hear me in the subsequent slides about our CTS Rotier system. Once the leukapheresis is done, the PBMC isolation, we have a CTS Dynamag for the T cells where we could able to process it. Then finally we have the electrophorator system, what we call it as a Xenon. So you will hear points about the Xenon in the later slides. Finally we have the incubators for cell expansion, and finally the infusion can take place using our cryomed control rate freezers as well. So this is a comprehensive cartoon that talks at every step. You see it here. We have a solution that fits, that solves your problem, that accelerates your ongoing research. Okay, so one of the the major issue that we could see it here is the manufacturing issues. When you are going for a the open mode, so we have proposed it as an automated, scalable, and modular solution. So therefore, I would like to introduce you the first GIPCO CTS Rotier counterflow centrifugation system, which is a closed cell processing system for cell therapy manufacturing. So what's the some of the key specific points of the CTS Rotier system is the process flexibility, because believe me, in the cell therapy manufacturing, user programmable software, where we could able to create and optimize broad range of protocols exclusively for cell separation, washing, and concentration would definitely help, depending on the specific cell therapy application that the scientist is interested in. Another important point is the high cell recovery and viability. The fluidized bed that the CTS Rotier system supports a very low shear processing, and which enables greater than 95% of the cell recovery, by maintaining the the cell viability as well. So this system also supports the 21 CFR Part 11 compliance system, and OPC UA interface enablement is also present for this Rotier system. So the system is essentially designed, to fit into multiple cell processing workflow steps. Wash and concentrate, it concentrates the desired cells, and also media and buffer exchange, and also for the separation and enrichment. The segregating cells based on the size to increase the purity, remove dead cells, or eliminate the manual processes such as Ficoli. So that's where the value proposition of the system truly brings in for automation. And every customer, or every scientist would be happy to hear that the Rotier system, the cell processing system that we have, it bridges the gap between the R&D and the manufacturing. It's a flexible platform where you can able to process broad range of cells and applications. And we also support, I'm also following up some of the sessions where from the industry point of view also supports either startup or the one if there is any specific scientific assistance that is required, either in the form of a protocol development assistance is also included with a Rotier system purchase. It also comes with very flexible applications, small to medium scale processing, and medium to large scale, and medium to example 5 liter bags also can be taken as well for the using the CTS roadcase system. So the another the important system that I was talking during the electrophoration process that I was referring is the GIBCO CTS xenon electrophoration system. So this is a large volume electrophorating system for cell therapy process development as well as for manufacturing. It has a high transfection performance in volumes from 1 to 25 ml with an exceptionally proven cell viability and recovery. Okay, so it has a high speed and large volumes where you can able to transfect up to 2.5 to 10 to the power of 9 T cells in a time span that is super fast, is less than 25 minutes. It has a proven performance and viability, up to 90% of gene knockout and 80% viability is being widely processed using our CTS xenon system. It's an efficient non-viral transfection in an instrument, can be used to deliver DNA, RNA, and protein payloads as well. And of course, it's a closed system for processing, and we have a multi-shard consumables, which enables the sterile building to PVC as well. So that's a very, I'm not going into much details about the system, but if anybody would be interested, so kindly reach out to me, and we would be happy to provide more information about the comprehensive solutions that we have it. So finally, I was referring, the CTS. What exactly is the CTS? Is the CTS stands for cell therapy systems. So these are mainly for, you could able to see it here for CGMP manufacturing, testing and documentation, and proven in use. So the CTS, either the reagents, or the instruments can provide, these three important pieces of information, especially when you look for CGMP manufacturing. They're manufactured in, in conformity with the GMP for medical devices, 21 CFR. Testing and documentation, traceability documentation, including DMFs and regulatory support files, and the certificate of origin. Product safety testing as well is included, and they're proven to use because used in FDA approved and the EMA approved for CAR-T therapies, and used in over 200 clinical trials. So the organizers has provided me very limited amount of time. So therefore, I have cut short my presentation to that requirements. And with this, I wanted to thank Professor Redana sir and the entire organizing community for providing this opportunity. And it's a privilege. And we wanted to thank Redana sir as well as the entire the organizers for providing the opportunity to associated with an eminent community like FABA. So with this, I stop myself, and I would pause and I would take up if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I mean, I think anybody who does research in the cell culture field, they know thermoscientific.
Yeah. Absolutely. I just wanted to thank Thermo Fisher for supporting. Without support, none of these activities are possible. And you are a leader, Thermo Fisher, and all your products are very, very important in our day-to-day activities. I'm sure everybody in this among the audience have used it for years and will continue using Thermo Fisher products in the future. So thank you again for supporting this event.
Thank you very much, sir. Yeah, thank you, sir. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity, sir. Once again, thank you.
Thank you for that. I thought you will announce some kind of discount for all the startups, special offers to the startup companies working in cell and gene therapies. Maybe you can announce later also.
So definitely we would connect the startups, and our marketing team usually has some specific offers, for cell culture related stuff. We would definitely engage with all the startups, sir. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Mysore Venkatesh, you raised your hand. Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, see, basically I'm a plastic surgeon. I'm a professor at Ramaya Medical College. Being a plastic surgeon, we have fat at our disposal. And recently it has been found, not recently, but since a number of years, fat cells are becoming one of the workhorses in reconstructive surgery, in the sense that they contain these adipose-derived stem cells. And when they are used in optimal quantity with a proper, mechanism, they can be converted to any type of a tissue. In fact, certain augmentation procedures like a breast augmentation or any contour defects can be
Sir,
done by making
can you please come
fat
to the
grafts.
point?
Yeah,
Because we
so
are running short of time here.
I would like to know from the presenter, I'm sorry, I do not recollect his name, whether he will be able to do anything as far as adipose-derived stem cells is concerned with respect to reconstructive surgery.
Thank you very
Because that
much,
is
sir.
one of the most fascinating fields in the field of reconstructive surgery. It is something which, an area which has got a lot of potential, but very much, it's not explored to a great extent. Because see, we are clinical people, we are not scientists, but we have the fat at our disposal. And if somebody is willing to collaborate and do something in this area, it would be really great.
I'll provide Mr. Pratap Naidu's contact to you, sir. You can take it offline because it's a collaboration. It's an
Well, no, first of all, I would like to know whether there is any interest in this area, so that we can start.
Sir, my apologies. My apologies. We are really running short of time. So let's wind up here. And Pratap Naidu, sir.
No, the thing is, I know short of time. It's just a yes or no. Because we have registered for this, and we are very keen to see whether any collaborations are possible. It can be just a nanosecond, yes or no.
Right, so thank you very much for this question, sir. Because this would require a larger amount of discussion. Because as you were requiring about the adipose tissue, and you wanted to engineer it to a specific application, right? That's what, if I can understand it.
Yes,
So
exactly.
So generally we provide a comprehensive solutions. We normally doesn't do the work, but we provide the tools to accelerate the research that you are doing it. So I wanted to understand more details, probably as Dr. Jagadish was mentioning. I can connect you offline and discuss it and see what is the best we can support you, sir. Thank you.
Sure, sir. That's really great from your response from you.
Great, sir. So I have to play a good cop on bad cop role here. Sorry to cut you out. Great. Great, Pratap Naidu, sir. Thank you so much. So I think I'm actually much excited for this next session because we have 4 successful entrepreneurs who raise money from VCs, and I'm seeing lots of articles about them, lots of news. So I'm really delighted to have all of you, and I would actually invite Uday to take the lead in it. So I'll just put the spotlight on Uday.
Yep. Can you hear me, Jagdish?
Yes, Uday.
Okay. Thank you. So I think so far we have had actually a wonderful 2 sessions. So in your mini MBA, the first chapter will be understanding the ecosystem for startups in India. I think Dr. Swaroop did a brilliant job of highlighting all of that. And I think the second chapter has to be, how do I choose an incubator? And I think within that, the mini message of valuation and parting with equity is actually a very important point. Largely because I have found that most science-turned entrepreneurs or scientists have this mentality that it's my idea, I need to own 100% of the company. It really doesn't work like that. I'll just give you a simple message that Dr. Reddy, who was my boss and my mentor, would always tell me, Uday, 100% of zero value is still zero. So unless you cannot create value, there is no point on you holding on to 100%. So I think that's a very important message for entrepreneurs to understand that at some time or the other, they will have to give up something as long as what you get back in return is bigger than what you're giving up. So just remember that. That message of Dr. Reddy comes very often to me back. So moving along on that, and we have 4 rock stars. I think as somebody just mentioned, we have 4 rock stars today who have really made fantastic progress and really showing the path to other entrepreneurs. I know 2 of them extremely well. Anand and Shishir are people that I've know. The other 2, it's the first time that I'm meeting them. It's my pleasure. Izil and Arun, I have heard a lot about you, mostly good, but I have heard a lot about you. So very happy to connect with you and move forward. So I think what we are going to do is we are going to keep it as a free flowing fire chat, which means I will just pose a question to each of the individuals, not the same one, different one, with the idea of trying to understand how they got into this business and how they become successful. Because at the end of the day, I think understanding that pathway that they took and why they took and how they overcame obstacles is really what it's all about. So let me very quickly introduce all of them to you. I'm just going to read it off the list that I have here. Dr. Izel is a scientist, innovator, thinker, hiking enthusiast, and a citizen of the world. She's driven by passion to leverage the power of biology, and her experience in bio-based product over the last year helps her bring deep tech expertise to the work at String Bio that she runs today. So welcome, Isil. Very nice meeting with you online. Arun is the next one that's here. Arun Chandru, who runs Pendurum. Arun comes from an academic background. He's focused on solid rocket propulsion, advanced manufacturing, everything I know nothing about actually. So, but welcome Arun, and he has been named in the Forbes Asia Under 30 2016 Healthcare and Science. So congratulations and very nice to meet you as well. So Shishir, Dr. Shishir, I know him extremely well. I've actually literally seen him grow in front of my eyes as an entrepreneur. I hope he recollects the many different BIG grant committees I was on. Some of them we funded. You've still not offered me a free lunch, but that's okay. I'm not holding that against you. But Shishir has a PhD in molecular virology, and he founded RAS with Dr. Rachna and currently taking care of operation, sales, and marketing of a new spin out called Huvel Products, and very successfully launched many products that I think India badly needed. So welcome, Shishir. Very nice seeing you again. Last but not the least is Anand. Dr. Anand Kumar Anand is co-founder, CEO of Bugworks, an Indo-US antimicrobial resistance startup. I think they are working on something that could be a game changer. As you know, antibiotic resistance is probably one of the biggest problems we have in the world today. And his company is designing next generation antibiotics that tackle a broad spectrum of superbugs and have already entered clinical trials from what I remember. So warm welcome to you, Anand, and really nice seeing you again too. So I am just going to ask questions in the sequence that I see you on my screen, and I see Anand first. So Anand, I'm going to ask you you can tell us stories about this. True or false doesn't matter as long as it's an exciting story. What made you do a startup? I mean, was it a thought that came up while you were taking a shower or driving or dreaming, or does it run in the family? I mean, I'd really like the audience to know how you turned to entrepreneurship and a little bit of history and background on that. So.
Thank you, Uday, and thank you to FABA, the organizers, to give us this opportunity, and lovely to be these fellow panelists. So I have to say a story and keep it very short. Uday, so I actually come from a semiconductor background. I used to design computer chips in the United States before I came back to India. And I did a couple of startups in the electronic space when, electronics outsourcing was just booming, and they got acquired. And then it was actually a major health setback that I suffered, Uday, that almost wiped me out. They got me thinking that maybe I was meant to do something in healthcare. Plus, I came from a family filled with doctors who were doing a lot of work in medicine, etc. My entrepreneurship journey started with semiconductor and then bled over into biotech, and started a cancer company called CellWorks, which is a precursor to Bugworks today. And there we said, India is perfectly placed to bring mathematics, modeling, simulation, electrical engineering into biology. It was too siloed, and the biologists were quite boring that we were working with because they were just, too deep like this. So we brought in engineering methods and simulation into biology and created CellWorks to simulate cancer pathways and customize treatment for cancer patients. While I was in CellWorks, we kept seeing that Indians are dying by the lakhs due to superbugs. And no big pharmaceutical companies were working on antibiotics, Uday. And the last new antibiotic, as you know better than me, fluoroquinolones in the 1960s, nothing has come since then that is transformational. So came up with this audacious idea saying, if we have the largest problem in the world, big pharmaceutical companies are not interested because scientifically super challenging, economically, too many question marks with antibiotics. Can we actually put together a company from India where our backyard has the worst superbugs, Uday, and create a company? So you can call it naivety, you can call it audacious, but I think it needs a combination of some naivety, being audacious, having passionate, going after a large problem, saying, can we crack it from India? And it's just fortuitous that when that whole thing was coming together, we got it funded by Wellcome Trust to run a simulation on MTB, to take electrical engineering simulation algorithms and simulate TB to come out with new combinations for drug-resistant TB. Who did the wet lab work? AstraZeneca India. And Uday, just as the project was finishing, AstraZeneca India closed. They were one of the best pharmaceutical companies in India doing deep work in infection. You know many of them because they spawned off many companies, some sitting in this very call. So it is fortuitous for Bugworks that I put up my hand and said, guys, I can take this talent, a rich set of talents from AstraZeneca. So this electrical engineer plus AstraZeneca came together and that became Bugworks. And I think we have to solve our own problems. I just tired of waiting for this to be solved by the West and then drugs coming to India after an afterthought. People told us you cannot do drug discovery from India. There is no funding, no regulation, no ecosystem, only no, no, no. And we still went after it because we have this passion, commitment to make a difference. If 4 to 5 lakh Indians are dying every year, that includes 100,000 babies dying of neonatal sepsis, we have to fix it. So entrepreneurship was driven like that. My last point is, while the science is very interesting, passion to make an impact, business has to be central. So I'm a non-scientist, and I think it's an advantage to have a non-scientist who comes from an entrepreneurship background, hardcore fundraising, networking, ecosystems, that kind of person in the team. So that's our story.
Excellent, Anand. Let me ask you, a lot of what you all of the entrepreneurs have, the passion that you talked about, and the dream of, changing the world. Everything you just said, right on the money, we all have that. But what made you think that you were going to be successful? Was there ever an iota of doubt saying, if I don't do this by next 1 year, I'm going to get out of here? Was there ever any doubt in your mind?
Yes, there were doubts early, and the doubts mainly came because we did more than 150 presentations today. So whatever little pride I had, I lost simply because it humbled me so much, right? And then almost about to give up. And I had, I don't want to sound too personal, but my father was my inspiration. So he was a very famous doctor who passed away in Chennai. And just before he passed away, when I knew he's going to go, he died of a multi-drug resistant infection, Klebsiella. Unbelievable. And then he said to me that, look, if you can crack it, you can save millions of lives that I could never do through my 50-year history.
Yeah.
Don't give. And, call it emotional, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. We said, no, we're going to do this. And even now, I don't know whether we're going to succeed, that a drug will be finally approved and we will make money. But if the journey itself is considered successful, I think we have some early success.
Right. Very inspiring, Anand. I can relate to what a lot of you said. Dr. Reddy got into drug discovery in part because he was heavily diabetic. So we started a program in diabetes. So it resonates with me, like what you just said, here's an unmet need in my family, and I have the potential to be able to resolve. So fantastic story. So I'll come back to you. I see Izzle next on my screen. And Izzle, as the CEO of a startup, I've been there, I'm still there. You have to do everything. And, and I'm saying, you have to make the coffee, you have to clean the table, you have to motivate the employees, you have to scold them, you have to make pitches to different people who you probably never like to meet outside of the pitch room. Pretty much everything, entrepreneurship is really difficult. It looks very cool from the outside, but being a CEO of a startup is perhaps one of the most difficult jobs that I can imagine. So why did you choose to be CEO? I mean, what is your favorite part of being a CEO? Is it motivating people, or, you know, what is it about being a CEO that made you get into this direction?
Hi, thanks everyone. Thanks for having us on having String on the panel here, and thanks so much to that for the question. So why CEO, right? So I think so let's just keep the title aside, because I think CEO is just what everybody can relate to, but I think it's ultimately what is it that you bring to the table, or what I bring to the table. Where we are at String today, right, which is kind of I would say we are in an active business building phase and post the initial kind of technology heavy phase. And one thing that is very clear is, I think what the founder brings to the table is actually the vision.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is very critical as the story and as the product market fit of the idea evolves. I think it's very critical to have the founder on board, because that is what will see the idea through the ups and downs of what is needed. Right? Because, you know, like you rightly said, I think the skills needed to execute and implement the innovation or bring the product to market at different times is different. You know, initially when it's purely at a, you know, initial kind of a validation stage, it is technology heavy, R&D heavy. And as you start to go to market, establish product market fit, there's a certain skill required in terms of selling your product, validating your product. And as you start to build and scale the business, then there's a different mindset that's required in terms of branding and growth, right? At each stage, a different skill is required. But I think why it helps to, at least this is my view, and, you know, I may realize that I'm wrong, but I think the benefit of having a founder CEO is they are able to evolve the vision and drive the various entities as the business evolves with that vision forward. And I honestly see that as my role here. And like you rightly said, you know, initially there are simple tasks like, you know, making sure that, you know, the office is in order. But I would say that as String has evolved, I as a person have actually evolved vastly. And one thing that I've realized is you become kind of the limiting factor for the company. So unless you grow, you know, the company, I mean, I don't mean to say that in a, it's kind of reality. I'm not saying it to say, you know, okay, I am the core here, but I honestly start to feel like the founder needs to evolve. And the day the founder realizes that maybe I'm not evolving, they need to step out and see if the business can evolve to a much bigger pace outside of them, much larger capacity outside of them. So why CEO particularly for me? I think like what Anand was saying, you know, I really enjoy, I think fundamentally my drive here is I believe that the next couple of decades is going to be the decade finally for biology. Mm-hmm. I think biology can present some very, very interesting solutions that can really solve fundamental problems for us. And having been in the space from, you know, kind of developing tools to developing technologies to now being able to leverage those technologies to bring solutions to market, it's very exciting to see. And I want to see that's kind of the drive for me in terms of being able to do what we're doing today.
Outstanding, Isel. And I think what you have accomplished during this time is just obviously exemplary. All of you have done exemplary work, but one of the things that I also wanted to follow up and ask you is, what do you do during a downtime? For example, you made a pitch, you are pretty sure you're going to get funding, and it didn't come through. So how do you handle, I mean, we can handle ourselves, but how do you communicate that to the people at the bench? I mean, I take my people out to lunch very frequently, more so than I take my family out. If you guys are listening, okay, just note that down. take them. So how do you motivate your employees during a downtime?
Yeah, no, I think very, very critical. So at String, the fiber that is there in the team today, and this is something that we strongly believe in, is actually a culture of very open communication. Because as much as we pat ourselves on the good times, I think it helps to be very realistic with the team during the down times as well, right? Because, and that's, I will go back to the vision here, Dr. Uday, is I think it's very, I think the truth is, the reality is what we're trying to do here is hard, right?
Yes.
And the probability of success is low, but if we succeed, the rewards are very high. And I think the team that is on board here is vision aligned in terms of saying, okay, if I'm going to work so hard, I want to work on something meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that that trust that you build with the team is built on being very open with them on the downtimes as well, right? Because, I think rather than sugarcoat it, they actually appreciate when you're being honest with them and saying, yes, it's a tough financial market. Yes, it's tough to, raise funds for a technology-driven startup from India, but we are on board with the journey and we're moving forward anyway, right? So that's kind of the culture that we've built. So I would say the town halls for us ends up being both tough questions as well as the easy ones.
Just one very quick. How often do you do the town halls? Only during bad times or good times? Or there's a set program that you have?
Yeah. See, at String, we do two things. So monthly once we have kind of an all-team town hall.
Mm-hmm.
And in between, let's say once a month we have a town hall, and once a month we also do something called tea time. And a town hall for us, which we call as an all-team review or ATR, is a more business-oriented, let's discuss where we are going, kind of an open question format to address any concerns that we have. We also do something called a tea time once a month, which is more on a personal side of things of, not so much, let's keep the business aside and let's just talk to each other as individuals. So I think both the forums help from a communication standpoint internally.
Excellent as well for those insights. I'm pretty sure a lot of the startups that are here are taking notes on what Anand said and you said. I think these are things you can't read in a textbook. These have to come out from people who have walked the walk, so these are really good to hear. Shishir, you are next. As I said, I have seen you literally grow beautifully as an entrepreneur. When I first met you, I have to tell you, I could see that there was fire in the belly. It really didn't matter to me what you were trying to sell me. And as part of the BIG review committee, I'm sure you remember those days where you were standing and I was sitting and asking questions. The one thing that came out to me was that you had fire in the belly to be successful. And obviously, you're very successful. Do you think that having a fire in the belly is important, or making money is important? What drives a successful entrepreneur such as yourself? You are not out there to change the world, right? You said, I'm going to make things that Indian scientists don't have access to. That's how, baby steps, I'm going to change the world. And that was a beautiful story that I heard, and you still owe me lunch, by the way, but can you please tell us what was the thing that really exploded in you to do all that, and you continue to excel at what you're doing? So
yeah, thanks a lot for the opportunity and exciting panel on the board. So see, important thing is to have that fire, and still fire is always there for any entrepreneur. I think the journey of entrepreneur, most of them would be the same: the hunger to do something good, something good to society, something good to your own people. One thing which actually always triggered me and Rachna to start companies, this is the third company which we started and successfully doing good. is that to have to generate employment back to society was the one which always had at the back of mind. I think that's the best way to give back to society, rather giving on charity, rather giving on freebies. So what we always felt is to generate as much employment as possible. That's one thing which is always driving us even today, and keep our necessities to the minimum. That's what we understood of being an entrepreneur. Always our necessities are the lowest priority. In the sense, it's not the priority, but let us keep our necessities minimum so that we are happy in whatever we achieve and progress from there. And luckily, all the employees supported us, and so far we have been associated with most of the employees here. Last 10 years they are with us, 10 to 12 years they are with us, wherever we go. From the RAS previous experience with acquisition, after acquisition, they joined us in the pay cut, taking the pay cut and joining back at Huel. So this actually created lots of pressure on us. I mean, direct pressure on us to build more and more units like this and more people working with us around. So that's actually gave more motivation than anything else to start a company.
Yep, excellent, Shishir. The reason I asked you is very specific. You know, I mentor quite a few companies, and oftentimes my first question is to the CEO is or a founder is, why are you doing this? And the typical answers I'll tell you I get are, I hate my job or I hate my boss. I want to be on my own. That's number one answer that I hear. The other is, I want to make a lot of money, sir. You know, right now I don't have. I want to make a lot of money, sir. You know that. And the third, which is the question I was asking Izil, was, I want to be a CEO. I've never been a CEO. I think these people who are CEO look very important. All the wrong reasons. So I mean, how do you handle such people? I'm pretty sure in your company you have people who say, sir, you know, I want to go and start this on my own or whatever. How do you keep them engaged and, you know, keep the attrition low? I mean, that is a skill for a startup also, because even for 5,000 rupees, people will change jobs, as you know. So
absolutely, I agree. I think attrition is pretty high, and see, even connecting emotionally also to help to some extent. But see, basically, inflation is going up, and catering to the needs of the employee have become tough day by day. It is, though you keep emotions with them and being transparent with them and with considering them as part of your family, but ultimately you have to cater their needs as well at home, because EMIs are growing, there are lots of expenses, very difficult to curtail these attrition rates at some time. But I had these issues in a couple of times in my life. So people went out, and good part is when I started back again this company, and they came back to me again. So that's what I feel is, exits are not to be made tough to the employees. What I feel is that we need to have this, so that they always look back to us and we always look back to them for a longer journey together.
Fantastic. I mean, thank you so much. I mean, very practical advice. And I think something advice that you just said is something that all startups and their CEOs can use. So thank you very much. Arun, very nice meeting you. I have obviously heard a lot about Pendurum and you, mostly good, as I said before. One of the questions I have for you is, I mean, if you look at your investors, the people who have invested in your company, I mean, these are who's who of India. These are real, some of them are really big names, household names that are there. So a big challenge that I found in my past, and as well, not as much now, but in the past, was managing heavyweight investors who are on the board, right? Because obviously they're very successful people, and they have their own view of how things need to go, and they relate to their own successes and say, this is how it worked for me. How do you handle managing a board? Is a very big critical function of a CEO, I believe. And without, as Izul said, you can lie to them, but you know, you also need to make sure that they're engaged. So how are you able to do this? Because I don't see any gray hair on you. So how are you doing it? How are you managing these heavy ticket people?
So thanks, Dr. Day, and thanks again to Baba for this opportunity. Wonderful panel, great discussion. So I think I'm getting the toughest one here. So the thing is, the initial first 5 years of Pandorum actually was purely supported by the DBT, that's the government of India, right? So during that time, it was purely based on research grants and say things like that. So that time it was more of a research-oriented company, and as you rightly said, as investors start coming into the company, it becomes much more formal actually. So in terms of Pandorum, we have been actually lucky to have some of the people like Sachin Bansal, Binny Bansal from Flipkart, Mr. Sunil Munjal from Hero, and the Indian Angel Network actually. And Kotak, Kitman, and some of these investors, right? So who have been there with us for almost now 3-4 years actually. So the thing is, how we see this perspective is important here actually. So everyone, as you said, has been extremely successful in their own fields actually, and they are deeply committed, or they have a huge amount of trust for this entity actually, that this is doing a good R&D and the output is actually relevant to the society, because as you know, right, blindness is kind of a big issue actually. So the motivation of these investors is kind of different, if you say, when they look at a company like Pandorum. It is not the way probably they would look at aggregation company or e-commerce company or something else actually, which is driven by certain different indicators. Yep. In our case, actually, it's mainly driven by the kind of quality of R&D we do, and then the kind of asset building that is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, say clinical studies, etc. So there is no revenue which is going to come before any of these events. So
exactly. Yep.
The understanding what they have about this company is much more different and probably much more mature than I would say a lot of VCs around in this space. Because a company like Pandorum or probably String and Anand's company, all these require such people to support them in the longer term. Because as you know, these will not produce any revenue before 5 years, 7 years. We are actually 10 years now down the line, right? So 5 years with the investors' money. And the pressure probably what would come from hardcore VCs, financial investors, would be much different than these actually. And these people have been much more, in fact, helpful in driving certain things, because they also know that it's a kind of a slow business. It's not like a fast moving business, right? Like, because you cannot accelerate animal studies. Like, you'll have to do the same 3-month studies, 6-month studies and things like that. So they see a very good macro picture. So the kind of interventions at a micro level is minimal. At a macro level, it is kind of, I would say, beneficial.
So, I mean, it sounds like you have a dream board. I wish, that's great. But let me do a little bit of a role playing. What if one of them got up and said, Arun, I don't think you should be spending this $3 million on that study. I don't want you to do that. How would you then, I mean, obviously you can't offend them and say, can you please keep quiet? I know what I'm doing. But how do you handle that situation?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, because the direction or the overall, way in which the company is moving in terms of the studies and things like that, they have to be very, cogently decided actually, because these are pretty expensive studies. Once you start a study, it'll cost maybe $500,000, $1 million kind of thing.
Right.
And someone might have a different perspective that why are you doing these studies now? Here in India, probably should have done these studies in the US, or why are you doing it in the US? Why can't you do it in India? Or why are you doing, say, for example, this particular disease indication and things like that? So there are debates. There are, of course, inputs what we get actually, that which direction is better and things like that. And in this sense, actually, we have a pretty eminent scientific advisory, board actually. So
I'm well aware of one of them, yes, who's a good friend of mine. Yes. Ajit,
So,
Ajit is there, right? So.
of course, so, they are actually industry veterans, right? Industry veterans and practicing clinicians, actually. So, these are discussed with them and, very extensively in depth and things like that. And then the things are actually presented to the investors or, the key people in the system, actually. And that's how the decisions are made. Say, for example, one of the examples I can give is when, say, COVID hit, actually, there was a lot of uncertainty around in the air, right? So some of the studies, what we were doing kind of went on to a roadblock. We were working on, pursuing the cornea pipeline actually into the human studies and things like that. A lot of supply chain issues came and, it all got hung up actually. We had to, say, use our, platform technology and then kind of pivot to COVID or, lung-induced ARDS, lung related this thing indication actually. So that's when we kind of gathered everyone around and then got a consensus and then did some of the studies in that direction, and then at the end of the day it proved beneficial because we could show that okay, we are not ophthalmology company, right? It's not we are making corneas or we are working in the R&D of corneas. It's a platform technology. We can work on multiple tissues and things like that. So it was a very kind of a say democratic decision, I would say.
Right. So sounds like you like to build consensus using all the expertise that you have around you and then construct an argument in, why you should be doing that. Sounds like it's consensus building. You rely a lot on consensus building from people, experienced people. Is that about right? Yeah.
That's absolutely true because, this kind of field, as we go on moving it, the field also moves. And, as Ariel rightly said, right, the founders also have to evolve. So how do founders evolve? Like, obviously we can take some courses, do some YouTube videos and stuff like that. But obviously we need experts whom we can rely on actually, who have had, 30 years, 50 years of experience in their own fields and then, kind of guide us actually. So that's very important to get a consensus among experts and then drive it.
Okay, excellent. By the way, I want to put a plug in for what I do. I do 3D bioprinting of vascularized human lungs. So if you ever feel the need for that, be happy to showcase that technology to you. So thank you so much. Very good insights. And I'm sure what I'd like to do is at 6 o'clock, open it up to the audience because I'm pretty sure they're dying. But so we have about 10 minutes, maybe one last round of not questions, but Anand, is there one thing you feel that you should have done differently? I'm sure not all decisions you made where the right turned out to be right. Was there one, and then how did you handle that? And I'll ask the same questions to everybody. Yeah.
Great question. We all have skeletons in our cupboards. Let me just answer it in two parts. From a structure perspective, because there are many startup companies in here, Uday. We started US operation separately from the Indian operation, and then we also have an Australian footprint. So I think it's very important to have a globalized view because most of the problems we are solving are global. Talent is global. Funding pools are global. Grants are global. So the one or two things that I would really request people to do very early on as they plan thing is tap into global grants as soon as possible. DBT is only a seeding grant. They are not meant to make your company survive. So the day you get the company going, the CEO, COO, whoever has very strong grant capabilities, global grants we need to tap in sooner than later. The number two thing, second and last point, Uday, is that maybe me as a founder should have moved to the United States. Although we structured the US company in Delaware owning Bangalore, and this is a US entity holding the IP, not having the key drivers of the company, the CSO, the CTO, CEO in the US, made it very difficult to raise funding. So we lost out on the fact that we are a US company, but still had to go and beg the whole world to raise funding. So with all due respect to India, with all due respect to the outstanding ecosystem that we have here today, compared to 10 years ago, if you're going to do a drug discovery or a gene therapy or a cell therapy company, it's a 12 to 14 years. Please think about global presence and having at least one or two of the management committee members there. And you asked a follow-on question. How do we? Things basically, we go around the world. So we have funders from Japan, from South Africa, from UK, United States government, etc. It's a tough job. So my full-time job is a chief begging officer to go around the world and beg funds. So please think through the funding as much as you think about IP and you think about your gene and protein. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent, Anand. By the way, I strongly, we have a partnership with a US-based company, and I tell people we have already ahead of 99.9% of Indian companies because of that one connection that we have. I believe in that, truly believe. I mean, just look at the math, right? 50% of the revenue in any pharma product is based out of US. Right? I mean, so right off the bat, it tells you that having some element of presence in the US as early as you can is very important. So, and I think
And Uday, sorry, just because a lot of people ask me this question, right? This doesn't mean I'm not nationalist, I'm not patriotic.
Right. Totally.
Don't confuse that from the practicality and the pragmatism required to keep a biotech company afloat.
Totally. Excellent, Anand. Thank you. Isil, same, is there one mistake you think you may have made? And if so, how did you correct it, or what would you do to correct it? So,
sure. There's quite a few, but I'll probably start with a couple.
Sure.
So I think one of the things I would highlight is, I think for the first 4 or 5 years of our existence, we didn't brand communicate our story very well. In fact, we were found by partners from outside. And when they found us, they were like, oh my God, you guys are doing this great work here, but you should be talking more about yourselves. So I wish we had done that earlier, sooner, because you also realize, for the kind of innovation that you want to do, right? You're making big jumps. I think it's very critical to communicate, educate, evolve the ecosystem as well, along with you. And I think that is something that we needed to do. Fortunately for us, given the work that we're doing in climate impact and sustainability, with the pandemic, there's actually been huge tailwinds, right? And globally, people are talking about decarbonization and climate impact. And so that's really helped us. But we were doing this work 8 years back, right? And at that time, we didn't spend sufficient time talking about what difference we could make. I think I wish we had done that sooner. That would be one. The second, I think, lessons learned largely from fundraising is that we could have done a better job of doing, kind of a product market fit for the kind of funds that we reached out to. Like I think Anand said, we also spoke to, I think, hundreds of investors. I probably would have talked to every single investor in the Indian ecosystem today. And it took us a while to realize that for some investors, no matter how much I try to optimize my story, it's just not a fit, because it just doesn't fit their investment ethos. Because I don't mean to put down VCs in any way, but at the end of the day, they are fund managers. They're managing funds and they have a formula. And if you don't fit their formula, no matter how exciting your technology is, and if you're solving, climate change or cancer, it doesn't make a difference for them, right? Because it doesn't fit their formula. Yep. So now, after having gone through 3 rounds of fundraise, I would say we cater our pitch to the right funder and see if that, the product market fit there is very critical as well. Because, talking about CEO, what is really limiting is your time and your bandwidth.
Right.
So if you can gain efficiencies in terms of fundraise also, I think that is a big win. So that is something that I think I would do, definitely do a lot better next time around.
Excellent. So just very quickly then, do you look at the portfolio of the VC and say, I think this might be the guy for us, or how do you know who's the right fit?
So I think it is about talking to the decision maker at the fund. So rather than, go through your analyst, your associate, and go through the IC and the partner, I think you have to just talk to the partner and see if this is something that the fund, it even fits their funds, right? Okay. Because rather than go through this analyst and then take 2 weeks, talk to them and go through the cycle, if you can get even 10 minutes with the partner, you get an immediate feel if their risk appetite meets your risk profile. Yep. And if that's not a fit, you can do any kind of song and dance. It's not going anywhere.
Right, right. Thank you very much. Outstanding. Yeah. Shishir, I have the same question for you. Was there one mistake you made, and if what was it, and then how did you correct it, please?
Yeah, the first mistake is the losing out your majority, what I have done in my first venture to an MNC that actually, and I'm not from a background. I think Indian technopreneurs or technocrats are not trained in the business aspects. I'm not trained in the business aspects as such. Nor even, I mean, today I do understand the business well. I think that's a big learning for me what not to do, because the first to the techno or naive guys in the business, probably the first venture would teach you like first child in your family, you know. So they teach you how to raise a second child well. So that's how what all things not to be done is very clear from my earlier venture. So I keep correcting myself, and I said again, the technocrats are not good at projecting themselves. Actually, we are not good at projecting what exactly, and we probably would have hired some specialists in making presentations or specialists in projections, and probably haven't done that. We ourselves did every place, and that's the reason I think technocrats do fail.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you. There's also a comfort zone that us as technocrats are very comfortable. As long as you're talking about gene therapy, I'm a star, but I have no clue what you're asking me when you say, do I want dilutive capital or non-dilutive? You kind of phase out at that time. So I totally agree with you that transition, either by yourself or hiring somebody else who has that skill, I think can make or break the company. So complete agreement with your experience, actually. Yeah. Arun, I have the very same. Have you made any mistakes? And if so, what did you do for course correction?
So, one example probably would be that, in the very initial days, when we were, students and entrepreneurs put together, actually, we used to be overtly technical. In the sense, we used to say that, somebody asks us, what are you working on? We'll say that we're working on, three-dimensional hydrogels with the photo-cross-linkable tyrosine side chains and peptides, which can encapsulate mesenchymal stem cells, something, of that sort, right? So people will not understand it, only say some people in, the DBT and some people, who had IIT single-digit ranks, they could understand these things, right? So later on, slowly we realized that we should talk much more, investor friendly in that sense, which is probably we are working on corneal blindness, we are working on tissue engineering, regenerative medicine, and things like that. So that's one thing which we learned. Second thing is actually that we're still learning. Actually, in fact, this kind of raise money when you have money, right? So. Once you see attraction, you should actually kind of start accumulating capital, because capital is required, and most founders actually who come from technical background, they underestimate the requirement of capital. Actually, they think that okay, it's a science experiment, I can do it in 50 lakhs, like a big grant, right? But it could require probably 20-30 crores. So you need to have that kind of outlook, and you should raise capital much earlier.
But not worry about dilution then? I mean, so the question of if you raise too much, then you're giving up a piece of the company more than you should, because the evaluation at that period of time is. So how do you make that balance then?
True, that's true. Actually, see, what I have actually, at least personally learned is that these valuations, and particularly the equity, really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Because as long as you are a founder or co-founder, and you're driving the system towards certain goals, and you're driving the system as a whole organism, it really doesn't matter. It really depends on who the other people in the company are. Actually, do you treat them like your family or not, right? So if that's the case, then it really doesn't matter, actually. So I really don't know how much exact number I own in the company. So that's how it is.
Okay. Yeah, whatever you think makes the company move forward, that drives your decision, rather than saying I own 10% now, I'll go down to 4%. Sounds like so. Very good. I think a big hand to all the rock stars. And, I knew Anand and Shishir were rock stars, but I found two new rock stars today in Izil and Arun. And I'd like to meet with you, hopefully. I know you're both in Bangalore. If I ever come to Bangalore, I'd love to connect with you and hear more about what's going on and learn more, actually. I have a lot to learn. So Jagdish, is it okay if we open up the floor for some questions? They can people can either raise hands or chat. Sorry?
I thought there's a breakout room. Are we supposed to?
I know that. But
10 minute में हो जाएगा.
Okay. I'm just thinking that we take the questions here because then everybody, if somebody asks you a question, everybody else would be. So is it okay if we do that, Jagdish? Jagdish Garu, do we have your permission? Yeah.
Sure, Uday. I mean, whatever. So if somebody wants to have a special session, so we created 4 Zoom events with 4 of the entrepreneurs. So if somebody wants to have a special session with them, or otherwise, feel free to ask here so that everybody gets enlightened with your
Let's
questions.
do this. Let's do 15 minutes of Q&A here, and then you can go into a breakout session.
Sure, Uday.
Yeah, Ajit.
That's correct, Uday. Yeah. No, that's fine. I don't have questions. I was clarifying.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. She spoke like a kid, but she has enough experience.
Okay.
I'll mute somebody.
Yeah, you need to mute somebody.
Okay.
But I see we have a lot of participants. This is your time, guys, to be able to ask a question to people who have navigated, the tough road that you and I have ahead of us. So please, feel free to ask questions. Maybe Ajit can get started with a question. Yeah, there is one question from, I will read it out and then, sorry. I'm not very tech savvy and I don't know where the pop out went.
I can read it, Uday.
Yeah, please read it out. Yeah,
What is the difference between angel investor and venture capitalist?
Oh, okay. Anand, since you're on the top on the screen, can you take that one, please? Yeah.
Yeah, this is a common question from most startup companies. So when you go to raise money from friends, family, or somebody from the biotech ecosystem who's an entrepreneur who's willing to write the first $50,000 or $100,000 check, that's called an angel investor. Basically, they don't have the full institutional backing to go through very complex discussions on valuations, etc. So it's people typically known to you or who are very fond of the space that you're working in, etc. So not very organized, but they are very passionate about biotech, friends, families, ecosystem, iconic names in the biotech industry who don't mind writing their first $50,000 or $100,000. They're angels because they come to your rescue and they usually don't beat you down on valuation. Not always, but you can get beaten down. But in general, they don't beat you down on valuation because they want to be part of your play. That's angels. And then typically when you move to a series A round or a series pre-series A round, typically you bring in an institution who goes through 5-6 months of discussion, background checking, IP checking, valuation discussions, full due diligence on your company. That is an institution. Angel rarely does due diligence.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Uday, can I?
Yeah, please go ahead. And after you,
Okay.
there is a question posted as well. So.
Okay. Yeah, this question is for Anand, and then Azul, perhaps you can also answer. I understand, Anand, drug discovery, 8 years, 10 years, 15 years, a lot of money is required and very high risk, maybe 2%, 5% conversion into a product before it becomes a commercially success. Okay. But there, I think, most of the funding will come from the US and Europe and Japan and other places that you mentioned, which is very much true. And they have a better risk appetite than what's there in India. Okay, but can you give examples as to how it can be done in India for others? Perhaps short type of project. I think Azul, has done that very valuable product, but it can move much faster if it is in India. And if people don't want to go outside for raising funds and all, can you give some advice, Azul and Anand, for the
Let Edil respond first and then come in second. Please, Edil.
Sure.
Sure. So, I think, while we're talking about raising funds globally, there is a big advantage for innovation capital in India, right? Because that first 1 million that you raise actually can go much further along in an Indian ecosystem than in a Silicon Valley ecosystem. Right? So actually today it does help to have a huge presence for that early innovation phase in India. And for raising funds for that innovation phase, right? I think that like Anand pointed out, grants is a big source of funding for that initial phase. And DBT, I think, has got a number of initiatives there. We should also look globally for similar kind of grants. I would say that today, what has happened in the last, I would say, just 5 years is that there are a lot more VCs in the Indian ecosystem who are opening up to put down that first initial checks. So actually today, if you want to raise a 1 to 5 million in India, you do have VCs that are willing to come in that phase. Of course, the question remains as to what is the kind of valuation and control that they are willing to work on, right? Because I think that difference is definitely there in the Indian ecosystem versus the US. But I think that's definitely changed today. There is a lacuna for the next phase of growth. So if you want to look, if you're raising anywhere from a 5 to 30 or 40, there you don't have as many funds. But in the initial phase, definitely in the Indian ecosystem today, I think between grants and VCs and angels, there's definitely folks that are willing to fund biotech, high risk, long gestation period work as well.
To add on to what Edil said, great. I mean, Edil has given a great synopsis. Ajit, Uday, what has changed in the last couple of years? This is my 5th startup. And what I find has changed is impact investors are now trying to hunt in India. It's a new category of investors called impact investors, Europe-based, Japan-based, Norway-based, etc., who are not looking for 5x, 10x, 20x. Their narrative is not like Sand Hill Road VC or New York investors, right? We got invested by Lightrock, who are a fully owned subsidiary of Wittgenstein Global Trust. They've never done drug discovery, but they found AMR, immuno-oncology that we're working on as areas of importance to low and medium income countries who otherwise always are, really nobody cares about these areas initially. So to everyone here, apart from the grants, write grants like there's no tomorrow. Go hit Bill and Melinda Gates, Wellcome Trust, Rockefeller, XYZ, Howard Hughes, whatever. Second thing is, tap into impact investors all over the world. Cold call, write to them. I'm solving this problem with this thing. That's the new wave that is coming. And the other new wave, Ajit, that's coming in for drug discoveries, Japanese investors. And with all humility, I can say we brought the Japanese investors to India via UTech, University of Tokyo Edge Capital. So they don't have enough innovation going on in their country in biotech as compared to us. So new influx of money from investors like Japan, new impact investors who are looking at ESG, environment, social, governance type of projects. These are new avenues opening for the entrepreneurs here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you.
I actually see a bunch of questions, and my eyesight is good enough to read those, Jagdish. So thank you. I think this question is very appropriate for Arun. Arun, the question is from Dr. Suresh Kalangi. And it says, as drug discovery is a long journey, what was in your mind when you started the journey to out-license molecule to a launch on or do a launch on your own? What do you suggest for upcoming startups? So, monetization, I mean, how do you handle that, I guess, yeah.
Thanks. That's a kind of good question, because many researchers who work in the space of drug discovery development, they actually work in a segment of that. They don't do the whole process themselves, right? So they don't have that overall feel of what's the length of the thing and what's required actually. Somebody say comes from a computational background, then he starts a company on this thing. So in that sense, our model actually in that this thing has been that we will focus on the innovation, we'll focus on the R&D, we'll focus on getting the IPs and things sorted around that, and then kind of de-risk the asset till a particular stage. That's like phase 1/2, some of those clinical stage, and then prove its safety and some sort of efficacy in humans, and then try to kind of out-license it to a big pharma who can probably do better justice to that than us. So our, we from our initial thing, we know that our, what our strength lies in the core innovation. So we'll stick with that actually. And that's probably what many of the biotech companies in this drug discovery development space do. They take it from the value, along the value line, they will take a molecule or a bunch of molecules from point A to point B, and then hand it over to somebody. So there are very few companies, including big pharma companies, who will do everything from 0 to 1. So it's like they all kind of work out collaboratively in licensing or licensing. For many boutique startups, this acquisition model after the asset has reached a clinical stage has been there for now quite some time.
Excellent. There's actually quite a few, but I'll limit myself to 3 more questions and then we'll stop. Actually, this is very appropriate. Shishir, I think I would like you to please answer. How has post-pandemic science changed in biotech, health, tech ecosystem for India startups and at a global level? How has COVID really impacted the startup ecosystem, you think?
Yeah, I think this is another important question, because COVID, those who have created value chain during the COVID period haven't attracted investors much, because everybody would look as isolation case where there's a COVID and every revenue got through is only through COVID. So people are focusing on post-COVID, what is to be done. But basically, based on the COVID impact, localization in the sense manufacturing locally, making Atmanirbhar Bharat like stuff have been created lots of impact to develop the local products. In the sense, even the global companies are thinking of manufacturing locally. So many of the manufacturers who set up for a single product, say only for COVID, or maybe a drug, maybe a diagnostic. So they have lots of opportunities coming up on working on manufacturing, on OEM manufacturing setups to be utilized for them and making it global product on the local ecosystem. So I think lots of opportunities are coming up for startups to create, for example, if they have a single product in there, KIIT probably can have a manufacturing line for a global brand, so in India. So that's actually picking up quite a bit. And COVID is still active at many of the places. So it's not that only COVID is not active in India, but in Dubai, or if you talk other areas also, it's pretty active. So it is even that is encouraging the global manufacturers to focus on India to manufacture locally.
Totally. Excellent. Thank you. I'll just take 2 more questions and then we'll stop, because we need to then have the breakout session. I'll ask 1 question to Anand because it's specifically targeted to him, and then 1 more for Isel. Anand, the question is, I am the founder of a startup that is developing unique and innovative solutions in tissue regeneration. Could you please elaborate on how a subsidiary in the US must be structured?
It's a full discussion. I hope in the breakout, this person can come to the breakout. But in a nutshell, Uday, what happens is you have to be very careful about how you structure the India versus US, because the moment US acquires India, you can't write for any more DBT grants. So it's a very, very careful thing of keep the Indian thing going, develop IP, and try to tap into as many grant pools in India as possible. Only when the cut over happens can you afford to become a subsidiary of the US entity. And the timing actually works out fine, because you really need the US entity when you're going out for pre-series A or series A, like Edil said. In our time, it was pre-series. Now pre-series is happening in India, as Edil said. Now it's moving up. We only need to tap US money for series A. So just be very careful. And you need a person to advise you on intellectual property. It's not as easy as saying, I can just assign the IP property. There are transfer pricing consequences. Be very careful and go with the professional who can do the structuring to make sure that you don't have an issue with SEBI or an issue with DBT grants structures. That will be my short answer.
Excellent. Thank you. 1 last question for I think I've been pronouncing your name wrong, Isel. I believe it's Edil, but I completely apologize. Yeah. 1 more reason I need to come and meet you in Bangalore.
Of course.
So this is the last question, and I think is investing and developing a new molecule for anti-COVID drug in preclinical stage at this stage is a good value proposition or not? So really, is COVID gone out of flavor or out of fashion or not? So.
I think I'm going to actually pass on the question to Anand. I'm actually not the right person to address that question. We are in a completely different space. So Anand or Arun want to take a stab at it. Yeah.
Sure. I'm normally not dismissive, Uday, but I want to let this young lady or young man know that you'll be making a big mistake if you get into COVID. More than 163 assets are going through various stages of clinical pipeline, old drugs repurposed, completely new molecular entities, antifungals being looked at, antivirals, and it's going to be tough. Unless you're one of the big players who can dovetail off a vaccine story.
Yes.
Just a standalone small company doing pre-molecular and having to go through another 6-7 years. I'm afraid if you came to me for advice, I would tell them to look elsewhere. There are other good antiviral areas, broad spectrum antivirals, RNA viruses, but for COVID, not a good idea.
Very, very diplomatically said, Anand. Thank you for being a straight shooter. Shishir or Arun, would you like to add to that? And then we'll wrap up and go to the breakout.
I add a little bit. Probably drug repurposing is been a common feature. Probably look at some more cheminformatics and see that if this drug fits into some other antiviral or maybe a broad spectrum antiviral, rather closing down your preclinical stuff, probably look at different indications of different antiviral.
Great.
Yeah, excellent advice. Yeah, Arun, please.
Yeah, so I just generally wanted to add that this is a good time to be in life sciences, biotech, ecosystem in India actually, because we have seen this ecosystem, and the other panelists also, we have seen each other for I think a decade now. So the system has matured a lot. In the early days, actually, there was just BIRAC, which was supporting organizations. Now you can see n number of incubators, n number of funders, VCs coming forward, angels from different walks of life coming forward to support this sector actually. So this is actually kind of a golden time for early stage startups. For mid stage and late stage, obviously it's still a grind, but it's evolving actually. And this is all I would say primarily because of some of the very early institutions in this area, like DBT, which has been very, very active over 10 years, and some of the early organizations like IKP, which has been there for a very long time, right? So these kind of systems have been possible because of these kind of interactions and organizations like FABA, which is kind of bringing all these startups together. So this is great, and great to be part of this. Thank you.
Excellent. Yep. Well, thank you to all the 4 rock stars. Really appreciate your insights and your comments. And I think the half of the mini MBA actually came out of this session, by the way. So really well done. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Uday. Thank you, Uday.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So Jagdish, should we now direct the audience to the breakout groups?
So, I mean, we can ask audience who would like to talk to whom, because we created 4 Zoom links. I mean, Ajil, Anand, Arun, and Shishir. So you should have got your own separate links. If not,
this is on an email, or right here I see a breakout room in the bottom.
No,
right?
these are not the breakouts. Like if you go to the main event page, your sessions are there. Only you can start. Just see. I mean, or otherwise we can also open the mics here, and people would like to talk to. So instead of creating one more Zoom hassle, because after running this event, I would like to really minimize technical difficulties. So let's keep it here. If somebody wants to talk, feel free to open the mic and talk here. Or otherwise, if you want the breakout, I can create here only breakout and then send you to the different breakout.
Wonderful.
Why don't we do this? We do stop at 6:30, sharp, which is about 9 questions here. One question that there are quite a few, but I missed is, and I think this is relevant to all of you. How do you approach pharma companies for partnerships? I mean, is there a strategy, or you just cold call, or would you all of you like to take that, or please?
I could give you our experience.
Yes.
Every product is different. Every indication, therapeutic area, Uday, is very, very different. But in general, people here, when they work on early stage drug discovery, they think they can go to pharma companies. Typically, that's not the stage. Today, the rule of thumb in the world is there's at least an expectation that phase 1 trials should be done, so the de-risking is done. Pharma is very strong in clinical development today, as you know very well, phase 2, phase 3, registration and market. They'd like to have a de-risked asset. So phase 1 would be an ideal time. If you go preclinical, then you get 1/11th your value. The difference between a preclinical asset and a phase 1 asset is 11x. That's the industry average. So if you get 11 million here, you get 1 million here, right? So you're giving up too much too quickly if you are early in the thing. But then if you're out of money, and then there is a pharma company out there say that we can take over the clinical development, then you take a very tactical survival call at that point in time. No easy blueprint cookie cutter answer, but if you're doing drug discovery, try your best to push at least till GLP talks in preclinical. That's the first valuation that you will get from pharma. Anything before that, they will put all the money as bio dollars. You'll get $100 million deal with 200K upfront, and the rest of the money
back-ended.
Back-ended. It's called bio dollars. So don't. PR announcements mean nothing. Be careful before you give it up. And like Shishir said, right? Somebody comes and takes major ownership of your company or your asset. It sounds great in a PR announcement, but it can be devastating because there can be headwinds that you have to deal with. So long and short, at least hit GLP talks. Sweet spot would be phase 1, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. Completely agree. There's actually quite a few other questions that have popped up, but Ajit, please go ahead.
Yeah. Just to add to what Anand made the comment, but in the meanwhile, try to keep that relationship with various pharmas warm. Keep them informed, but keep them interested, keep them engaged, but don't give a molecule. At an early stage.
Jagdish, I see you've posted a question. Would you like to read it, please?
Sure. It's actually from Visu. So the question says, like, most scientists find it tough finding a co-founder from field different than their own field, either it could be business, regulatory, or engineering. So can you share some nuggets on it in co-founder search? How do you find another partner in life?
I think we can hear from all of them. Yeah. Please, Azul, go ahead. By the way, do you have co-founders in String or
We do. This is actually there's no easy answer or one single answer, I think, to this question. It's very much, I think a unique solution in each case, I would say. In the case of String, my co-founder is Vinod, who is from a completely different sector, who also is my husband. So when we started this, I was focusing on a lot of the technology development work. And when we started getting more into business and strategy, kind of convinced Vinod to come on board into a very different sector, right? Because, at that time he was doing more hardware, server hardwares across Asia Pacific, managing Juniper networks across Asia Pacific. So a very, very different industry. But I think Anand highlighted this. It helps a lot to have non-scientific co-founders, actually, because they really keep the science online, is what I feel. Because sometimes as scientists, we tend to say, it just takes too long. Yes. But that's not a good enough answer, because time is money. So I think having the non-scientific executive team really helps. But how you will find it, actually, I think it's very, very personal for each, because it needs to be a relationship of trust, a relationship where you can really butt heads and still walk away without losing anything in the relationship. So I think it's a case-by-case basis, unfortunately.
Shishir, I see a smile on your face. Sounds like you also have your own opinions.
Yeah, see, essentially what I feel is if you two technocrats, you while doing business together, you understand each other well. Excuse me. So you need to part your ways in between. So you understand who is good at science and who is good at talking. So that's what we did together, myself and my wife, being both in the same technocrat side. So we decided that somebody would do the science part and other do the administration part. So that's equally important in building up the relation externally. So internal relations are taken care by science and externally by doing the talking like what I'm doing now. So that's what I feel you need to understand. And other way is probably you need to build up good relations with the employees. And if you find somebody suitable in the long run, maybe convert them into a suitable partner later.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So guys, those of you who are not married, there's another item on your checklist now. Okay. So make sure you check that box too. Jagdish, maybe we should close at 6:30, but go ahead, please.
Sure. No, I was thinking maybe this like instead of chatting, like writing a message, please open the mics and talk, because I see very interesting questions like from Jagan. He said like when you are managing. Yeah, Anand, you want to go ahead? Please do.
Yeah. I saw Jagan's question very quickly to jump in. Uday, yours as well as Jagan's questions has come. I feel that when you're putting teams together, please try to have a dreamer and an executor and a networking person. That's a DE and DEN, right? The dreamer and execution person can be scientists, but the networking person who's outward focused, extroverted into funding, has no shame, very thick skin, needs to be a non-scientist. So it'll be nice to have a DEN combination coming in there.
That's nice.
The gentleman who was asked the question is, to Arun's point, the ecosystem today is fantastic compared to 10 years ago. We have to thank DBT. We have to thank state governments. I think there are 24 incubators, accelerators in our country. I'm in CCAMP, but there is BBC, there's IKP, there's unbelievable amount of
INS. Yep.
Exactly. So the question that came from the gentleman is, where do we go and find even investor lists? Edil, myself, Arun, Shishir, we struggled calling, just doing cold calls, talking, creating our own ecosystem. Now you go to these accelerators and incubators, you go to BIRAC, there is a list of investors. You come and talk to people who have raised money and have a lot of wounds on our skin. That's enough of an ecosystem. I want the entrepreneurs here to know that you are not alone. There is actually a relatively matured ecosystem for early stage capital. So don't despair.
And one thing to add to that, one thing to what Anand was saying is, I think if you look at a lot of the VCs today, they are starting a deep tech investment arm internally. And I think that's a very, very welcome change in the ecosystem. Still relatively risk averse, but a change nevertheless. So I think that's something that we should definitely look at. In fact, one of our very early investors, Ankur Capital, they're very much interested in the symbio space, in the biotech space, and they do startup pitch fest as well, which was not the case even like 3-4 years back.
There you go.
Excellent. Jagdish, what I suggest is let's not take our rock stars' time for granted. I think we should stop here and thank them. Is that okay, Jagdish?
For me, I love I'm enjoying the conversation. It's up to them. If they would like to stay, please hang in there. If not,
well, you put them under a spot now. I mean, I don't see any of them saying no. I have to go.
Actually, we scheduled like 1 hour Zoom call after your thing. So okay. I just feel that it's a part of the agenda. I mean, if not the case, I'm okay with it.
Are there more questions? Jagdish, are there more questions?
There are a couple of questions, Anand.
I do see more, yeah. Why don't we finish the ones that are out there and then call it
sure. There's one from...
Actually, Dr. Jagdish and Dr. Uday and rest, I'm going to excuse myself and just log off. Yes. Got another event to come this time. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks
Absolutely.
It was great to be on the panel with all the other rock stars. Thanks so much.
Yeah. See you in Bangalore.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah.
So all right, let's do the last couple of questions.
Okay, there was one from RX Propellant. I'm not just trying. Guys, please open the mics and speak. We are not in a confined area, so there's
By
no.
the way,
you can't ask questions here. You can't go to a VC. I promise you. So
100% true.
Yeah,
100% true.
So the question goes.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
I have a question.
Mandar, yes.
I'm Gopal Pandey. And
oh, sorry.
You mentioned about impact investor. I only wanted to have a list of those, the Japanese or the US ones or wherever.
Right. So one way
Maybe
of
that
doing
can
is,
just,
sure, you can talk to Faba, you can talk to, are you connected to an accelerator?
no, I'm not. I'm on my own.
You're on your own. Okay. So maybe you could talk, Jagdish. I mean, I would be happy to
I sent a
help
message to him.
Gopal.
I sent a message to him.
Okay,
Maybe you
we'll
can
take it
give a
off.
list. He can email it to me.
I think Redana sir will be perfect to tell you, Gopal sir.
Gopal, there's no free lunch and there's no easy thing that there's a list
I
here.
agree with that. I
Right?
only
Why
need the
not?
list. I only need the list on names and nothing more. No promises.
No,
Okay.
I'm saying there'll be one or two names will be given, and then from there you can work your way. To
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay.
I've been doing it. I contacted Ankur, by the way, but that's a
Okay.
different zone. So I've gone through the BIRAC list, but I need what you talked about and what Hazel mentioned about 1 to 5 million zone.
Okay. Yeah. So Jagdish,
you
please
can-
connect Gopal or the gentleman asking the question. We'll try to help offline. Yeah.
So Dr. Gopal, I think Dr. Ajit is in Bangalore, and you could always take his help.
Yes.
Sure enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Meet
Thank
him.
you very much. Yeah.
He's a very good mentor.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Jagdish, anymore you have to
Yes.
read out, and
Yes,
let this
please.
be the last one.
Yeah.
Before they politely all excuse themselves.
When starting your pharma biotech company, what are the main pain points of the companies? Is it infrastructure or time factor, or flexibility to accommodate different operations, or anything else? Abhishekar from RX Propellant.
I think this all of you should answer at least very quickly.
I let my esteemed panelists, co-panelists answer it, and then I'll come to it.
And then you should too. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, Arun, you look like you're ready to go. Yeah.
Great. Pain point, if you ask, it's almost like acupuncture, right? So there are a number of pain points. So I didn't know that actually, I was going into, the direction of a pharma company. I thought, when we started the company way back in 2010, it was kind of more of a different vision because it was more immature at that point of time. So the kind of pain points that you experience in the early stages, they are completely different. The pain points that you experience during the say early on fundraising stages, they are completely different. That's like explaining to various investors that what's your business model and how is it going to make some kind of returns to them or some kind of impact to society and all. Right? So you need to have those things addressed. Then comes the stage wherein you need to really address the regulatory issues. That's when you start talking about preclinical studies. You start talking about GLP, CGMP, and these kind of terminologies start coming into play. And then you need to have the capital for using all those things. So the pain points are many, but they are not new actually. In the sense, none of these pain points are new. So all these pain points are there for even the big pharma companies, small companies. It's all fine actually. And over the past decade or so, or something of that sort, the regulatory agencies across the world have improved a lot. In India, the DCGI has improved probably tenfold actually. The interaction is much more streamlined now. It is online. You get a much more structured response from them and things like that. FDA is like super streamlined. So these things are also improving. So the pain points are kind of going away, but it's good to have mentors, or it's good to have advisors who have walked the path, and it's kind of addressed or kind of avoided these pain points. So yeah, that would be
okay. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Shishir, and then Anand, I guess. So.
Yeah, I think the first pain point is to understand which sector you want to work on, because it all depends on pharma, biopharma or biotech side. It's all, you see the regulations, you see which would probably give you the better revenues and with less regulatory hassles first, and then probably can pinpoint to which area you want to work on. So from there, right from the planning, I think the technocrats are not very good at planning because they don't know the Excel well at that point. So they learn Excel during their entrepreneurial journey. So rather you need to understand the complete in and out of the project. So before execution, the first thing is to understand the complete project well, so that you don't miss many. I would definitely, you would modify and miss a bit, but you need to understand your business well, so that you can capture almost at least to the good level the complete project on paper.
Excellent.
Thank you, Shishir. Thank you very much. Anand, please.
Yeah, very little to add because Shishir and Arun hit the nail on the head. So before I give my last point, I want to thank you, Uday, for pulling us together. Wonderful. And Professor Redana and entire team. Jagdish,
thank you.
All of you. What FABA is doing year on year for all of those 80 or 90 entrepreneurs who had signed in is remarkable. We had none of this a decade ago. So I don't want to take it for granted. So I think it's very important what FABA is doing. Nothing exists like this. And we were completely lost. So you entrepreneurs have some help. Only point to add to what Shishir and Arun said is, while you come up with your idea of doing a startup, please work out the regulatory pathway. Who's going to do what? How long is it going to take? What are the impediments? Are you going to hit something like Biodiversity Act, which is horrible in India, while we have improved phenomenally in other areas, like Arun said, with regulation. So what are the potential bumps you will hit in regulation? And equally importantly, if not more, who is going to raise funding for my company and who is going to be solely focused on grants and equity? So to me, that is a bigger pain point than reagents, equipment, because India is taking care of that part. Actually, our infrastructure is very good. It's lack of funding, it's nascency in regulation, which will come to bite you guys. So just be extra careful about that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Should we? There are more questions, but I
one last question. If somebody wants to leave, feel free. Anand, I think you're raising and you want to leave.
I'm so sorry. I have to leave. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Professor Redana and everyone. Thank you.
Anand, maybe 1 second. Anand,
bye.
Maybe this question is relevant to you. If you could just give one.
So
are you talking to me?
Into the area for promoting the startup ecosystem in the country. And this is the beginning with the whale tank. And we will keep doing more and more activities, but we need the support from all the startups, incubation centers, and of course, the investors, and also big pharma and biopharma companies. And in fact, overwhelming response came from the investors and also the big pharma and biotech companies. Though they are not coming directly, but they are going through all the startups presentations, and already some positive response has come from the big pharma and biotech companies. So, but this is the exciting area that we are venturing into, startup entrepreneurship system. Hopefully, we will have more and more sessions like this.
Outstanding. Uday, can I just add 5 seconds? Is that
please,
for FABA, next year when we have this event, it will be nice to bring some big pharmaceutical, big industrial biotechnology companies along with entrepreneurs. Because I hear this when I go to the United States, Japan, everywhere saying, where are the exits? Why should we put money into your company when your own ecosystem is not doing deals with you guys or acquiring? There are no exits. So that financial inflection is a large piece that we didn't speak about that's amiss in our ecosystem. So as FABA also matures and move into new areas, bringing the large potential buyers or acquirers of this IP with the small companies in the same platform will bring about a complete paradigm shift.
We have a couple of them in the group. We had somebody in the morning.
Tomorrow's session, which Prabhat is moderating.
Yeah, sure, Anand. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Anand.
Thank you. As always.
Hopefully, see you soon. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Bye.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jagdish, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
I'm leaving too.
Okay.
All right, Shishir. Thanks a lot. Please
Thank
visit Bioness. Let me know, and let's grab lunch together. So.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks, Shishir.
Lunch is on me.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. Last question before Arun disappears too. So.
Suresh, sir, you want to speak something?
Yes, Jagdish. Thank you, Uday. Thank you, Arun. Actually, this question, I was holding on to it for the separate breakout session with Arun, and Arun ended up being present here. So I'll ask the question. This is a general question, and this is a very open-ended question. Because when startups start and work in the same space, they are trying to do the same thing, similar things personally on their own. I would like to see if there will be synergy, and also there will be speeding up the process if the startups working in the same space can come together. This will cut down the cost as well as they both can become partners and develop things further instead of reinventing the wheel and discovering everything in the first phase in a very difficult manner. So that kind of synergy and startup ecosystem, this is a kind of angel investing, I would say, is the startup that is already working in that space has done it, but then there is a startup that is bringing in a new dimension to that, which the original startup has never thought about. So could that kind of partnership be engaged? I'm sure these kind of forums that FABA is organizing helps. And that's why my question is coming on this forum. So please, Arun, take it and help me understand that, navigate that question.
See, startups actually are kind of, these kind of small entities which are actually supposed to compete with each other. And, it's kind of a more or less a free market environment there. And, obviously competition means it's not like, trying to do negative to the other. It should be healthy competition, right? So that helps the startups, that helps the ecosystem. Having said that, the other part, the collaboration part, that is pretty heavily happening in India at this point of time. If you ask us, we are actually at least taking the services of 8 to 10 startups in India. Say, for example, proteomics, for example, maybe some assays, multiplexing them and things like that. Actually, animal studies, machine learning, etc., etc. So, what if I say, startup A is making, say, a pen, and startup B is also making a pen. Why don't they both collaborate and make a single very good pen? So probably a better pen will come out if they both fight with each other, right? That's the principle of the free market, right? So it really depends on situation to situation. Like, say, for example, if you're responding to some pandemic, probably a much more collaborative approach is desirable, wherein 2 to 3 companies will come together. Somebody has better say expertise in terms of fill finish, somebody is good in say CGMP production. So these things can come together and fasten the product actually. It really depends on the situation, but as such, startups are supposed to have a healthy competition.
Thank you,
Arun. Excellent.
Yeah.
So I think we should.
Anything?
Please go ahead, Professor Redden.
Yeah. So when the big pharma and biotech companies are coming together, like Pfizer joining Johnson & Johnson or Novartis to work on a problem, why not startup companies? And in fact, that helps, but it all depends upon case-to-case basis. We have seen during the COVID pandemic, Bharat Biotech collaborating with Indian Immunologicals and use their facility for large-scale production of the vaccine.
Right.
Yeah, why not? But both of them are competing on vaccine market, but at the same time, they came forward and then used the facilities.
Yep. True. Very true. So should we call it a day? Arun, sincerely, I will write to you and hopefully would like to meet with you in Bangalore. So, yep.
Likewise, Dr. Ray. And thank you everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, Jagdish, it's all
Thank you,
yours.
Yeah, great. So let me just remove the spotlight.
So is that it for the day, Jagdish?
Yeah, yes, Uday. So the one announcement that I want to make is that we have booths. So we have 60 plus booths, nearly 70 booths. So they will be open until 10 p.m. today and also tomorrow. Please take time to visit the booths, talk to entrepreneurs. They have put a lot of effort so that you come and see their efforts. So please take time. And so overall, I think the day went very well. So thanks to all the 60 people here who stayed. And it's been a long day, but thanks for staying. So for myself, I'm done. Like if there are any feedback people want to give or something you want to talk, please, feel free to open the mic and speak up.
So Jagdish, wonderful
you're
work.
You're asking for trouble when you say give me feedback.
Not me, not me. Like anything that
don't ever ask for feedback in public.
So Uday, he is preempting that feedback is going to be very, very positive.
And
it doesn't make
Jagdish, I fully echo that wonderful way you organize the whole day.
Totally,
Uday, as usual, as always, you moderated fantastic. A
Thank
lot
you,
of,
sir.
you got most of the nuggets from each one of them.
Thank
It
you.
was,
Yeah.
I'm sure it will be of great help for everyone.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Jagdish, how do we go to booths?
Sir, it's a Zoom events link that what you have received. Otherwise, I'll paste that in the chat.
Oh, that we have to leave this session and then go to that?
Yes, sir. So you can go like that, or otherwise in the web, if you are logged in through a application client. Let me just give the link.
Okay. We can use the earlier.
Yes, sir. So use this link and use your registered email address, whatever you have used now. Please go to the booths and have a look what startups have prepared. And there is some collaboration that you want to make or feedback that you want to make or invest, just have a look.
Okay, Jagdish. Thank you very much. Outstanding job today, Jagdish. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks,
See you. Yep. See you. Bye.
Okay, everyone. Yeah. Bye.